It's my pleasure to call to order this December 1st, 2021 meeting of the James City County Planning Commission. Mr. Hull, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Null.
Present.
Ms. Null represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Rose.
Present, but Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, I do need to let you know that due to a prior commitment, I have to leave at about 6:40.
Mr. Rose represents the Roberts District. Ms. Leverins.
Here.
Ms. Leverins is an at-large member. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. Mr. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member and is this year's vice chair. Mr. Kropp. Mr. Kropp represents the Powhatan District. Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman represents the Berkeley District and is this year's chair. I'm Paul Holt, Director of Community Development and Planning for the county, and sitting to my left is Max Halavin, our Deputy County Attorney. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to amend the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, as I believe my colleagues know, but for everybody else, this is Mr. Haldeman's last evening with us on the Planning Commission. He is relocating to the Roberts District and therefore vacating his seat on the commission for the Berkeley District. So I would ask that we make a motion to amend the meeting agenda so we may consider a resolution of appreciation for our chair, Mr. Haldeman.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
So we have Max always corrects me when I'm incorrect, so we just voted on the motion to amend the agenda. Is there a motion to add that resolution of appreciation?
So moved.
Thank you. And a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yield to Mr. O'Connor.
Mr. Haldeman, will you join me up front? I'd like to take a moment to introduce Ruth Larson, who is our Berkeley District Supervisor. So thanks for joining us this evening. So this is a resolution of appreciation for Mr. Jack Haldeman. Whereas Mr. Jack Haldeman has served the citizens of James City County as a member of its Planning Commission from February 2017 to December 2021. And whereas Mr. Haldeman served as chairman of the 2022 Planning Commission, and whereas Mr. Haldeman actively participated in developing the update to the Comprehensive Plan, Engage 2045, and whereas Mr. Haldeman was a member of the Planning Commission Working Group that guided the Comprehensive Plan update toward 2035, and whereas Mr. Haldeman served at times as chairman of the Policy Committee and the Development Review Committee during his tenure on the Planning Commission, and whereas during Mr. Haldeman's service, the Planning Commission reviewed substantive updates to the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance and considered numerous legislative development cases. And whereas Mr. Haldeman was a graduate of the Virginia Tech Certified Planning Commissioner Program, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission of James City County, Virginia, does hereby extend its sincere appreciation to Mr. Jack Haldeman. Be it further resolved that the Planning Commission wishes to express its gratitude to Mr. Jack Haldeman for his time of dedicated service to the citizens of James City County. So, Jack, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And today is Jack Haldeman Day, but just on a very personal note, what I would like to add is that this resolution doesn't reflect Jack's passion for this community as well as his commitment over the years. From grassroots to op-eds and local government, I appreciate Jack's efforts and his leadership to this commission and this community. And I certainly look forward to his new contributions and wish him fair winds and following seas. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Well, first of all, I've learned to never answer texts that start with, could you give me a call? Because it never goes well. But I don't know that I could add much. That was very nice, Tim. But Jack, I just so much appreciate everything that you've done since before you got on the Planning Commission. You've been passionate about the future of James City County. You are so keyed in. You send articles You send warnings about where we might be going and how we should not be to get there. And that just says your commitment to your community. And I'm so appreciative of that. And I know that you're moving over to the other guy's district, but I hope that you'll keep sending those articles to me because I really do appreciate it. And I know you'll keep up your passion for this county and your concern and your love for it because I know that's where it all comes from. But thank you so much for all that you've done, especially this past year to the comp plan. That's a huge job. I hope you know how grateful I am and how grateful the citizens of the county are. So thank you. You'll be missed.
No way not to turn my back on somebody, I guess, but the first goal I had when I accepted this position almost 5 years ago was to try to outlast Mr. O'Connor and Mr. Kropp. I realize now how foolhardy that was. My love affair with James City County began over 35 years ago. We bought a lot here and just fell in love with the place. So the passion came easily. I think you all know what I'm talking about or you wouldn't be here tonight. So the work was easy because of that. And I hope to contribute further in the future. So thank you for this. I appreciate it. We now have time for public comment. This is an opportunity for residents to speak to a subject that is not subject to a public hearing tonight. Speakers have 3 minutes to offer their thoughts. Mr. Holt, do we have any speaker cards? Would anybody care to address the commission at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports of the commission. Development Review Committee, Mr. Polster.
The Development Review Committee meeting met at 4 p.m. on 17 November 2021. The committee members present were Rob Rose, Jack Holdeman, Frank Polster. Staff members present were Katie Pelletier, planner, Josh Crump, principal planner, Beth Clapper, administrative coordinator, community development, John Ressinger, staff planner, and the applicant's representative, Mr. Brendan Gorowski of Hexacon Energy LLC. Case number C210019, 360 Racefield Drive, Solar Farm. The applicant had submitted a conceptual plan for the special use permit for a solar farm located at 360 Racefield Drive. The item was placed on the Development Review Committee's agenda to discuss the project and seek input and questions from the DRC members. No action by the DRC was required. Mr. Brendan Gorowski of Hexagon Energy LLC had a brief presentation highlighting the scope of the project for a 26-acre, 3-megawatt solar farm with a lease from between 30 and 35 years and a 75-foot buffer along Racefield Drive and a 50-foot buffer on both the west and east side of the project area. He highlighted his outreach to adjoining property holders and a planning session with property owners to solicit their input and ideas. Suggestions by commissioners included natural planting of the buffer area to blend in with the surrounding rural area's vegetation, with a preference for native Virginia trees, shrubs, and grass, with emphasis on pollinating grasses and plants. A complete plan for decommissioning of the site, engineering stamped and reviewed as part of the local approval or certificate process, with the major objectives being to return the site, soils, and vegetation to pre-construction conditions at the end of the useful life of the facility. The decommissioning plan should be secured with a bond. There was a suggestion for a vegetation management plan along with a monitoring program for at least the first 10 years of the project to ensure the plantings in the buffer area and pollinating grasses under the solar panels were viable and sustainable, with a major objective to ensure the return of the site, soils, and vegetation to the pre-commissioning conditions. That's all I have to say. Any questions?
Thank you very much. You also have policy, I guess.
And we do not have anything to report, sir.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are those determined not to be non-controversial. However, a planning commissioner can pull any item for discussion. There are 2 items for consideration, minutes for the November 3rd, 2021 regular meeting and minutes for the November 10th Planning Commission Working Group meeting. Would any commissioner like to pull a topic, or may I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
All in
Consent
favor?
agenda.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We'll now open public hearings. First, AFD-21-0002, 9958 Mill Pond Run, Barnes Swamp AFD Edition. Ms. Haynes, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Haldeman. Good evening, everyone. Mr. David Hoag has applied to enroll approximately 60 acres located at 9958 Mill Pond Run into the Barn Swamp AFD. The parcel is currently undeveloped and is located more than 1 mile away from the core of the district. When a parcel is located more than 1 mile away from the core, state code allows it to be added to the AFD if the governing body finds that the property contains agriculturally and forestally significant land. The applicant has been working with the Virginia Department of Forestry and the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District for harvesting and resource management plans. Approximately 5 acres of the harvested land will be reforested, and the remaining harvested acreage will be converted into pasture. At its October 21st meeting, the AFD Advisory Committee voted 8-0 to recommend that the property is agriculturally and forestally significant and recommended approval of the application. Should the Planning Commission concur, staff recommends that you recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Haynes? Are there any disclosures? None. We'll open the public hearing. Does the applicant wish to speak? Only none. Mr. Holt, do we have any speaker cards? No speaker cards. I'll close the public hearing. Open for discussion or a motion. Mr. Polster.
I had a couple comments on the project that I thought was really laudatory, in that there was a enclosure that most of you read from the Colonial Soil and Water Conservation District. And it had a couple things in there that I thought were interesting. And one of them applies to the comp plan that we just finished with for an equine stocking rate. And so within that report, the gentleman had asked for them to come in, and they provided that stocking rate, fencing, planning, and all the rest of it, which I thought was really great, and I hope the applicant, in fact, takes that on. The second piece that I thought was interesting in there is that the land around where he's going to put the horse pieces of it is going to be reforested, and he had reached out to the Virginia Forestry folks for advice, as well as a shared funding for the replanting of that. And once again, I thought that was commendable, that we were looking at the conservation issues associated with that property where it was located. And so my hat's off to the Colonial Soil Water Conservation Districts, and I hope you, in fact, are able to follow through with those suggestions in that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the Barn Swamp AFD and the attached proposed conditions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holt, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Knoll,
Aye.
Mr. Rose,
Aye.
Mr. Polster,
Aye.
Ms. Leverance,
Aye.
Mr. Crop,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor,
Aye.
and Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to Z-21-0012 and Master Plan 21-0003, Proffer and Master Plan Amendment for the Continuing Care Retirement Facility at Ford's Colony, Ford's Village. Mr. Weissong, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the Commission. Mr. Vernon Getty has applied on behalf of Fire Development to amend the adopted master plan and proffers for the Continuing Care Retirement Community at Ford's Colony. The subject parcel is zoned residential plan community, is inside the primary service area, and is designated low-density residential in the comprehensive plan, which does recommend this use. In 2008, this parcel was rezoned from rural residential to residential plan community with proffers to permit a continuing care retirement community known as the Village at Ford's Colony. This currently approved CCRC for the property permits up to 741 units, rooms, and beds, and is accompanied by proffers intended to mitigate community impacts. This proposal would amend the approved master plan and proffers by reducing the total number of units, rooms, and beds from 741 to 516, and by changing the layout of the site. Of this 516, the applicant is proposing up to 286 residential units being single-family dwellings and multifamily dwellings, while an additional 230 assisted living, memory care rooms, skilled nursing beds would be located in the facility portion of the property. This development would include accessory amenities, which are intended for the residents and employees of the development only and not open for the general public. The proffers have been updated to include a unit mixture cap on the facility portion of the property, which would allow up to 75 apartments, no more than 155 assisted living rooms, memory care rooms, and no more than 40 skilled nursing beds. The major changes to the proffers include the updating of the current contribution amount for community impacts, the addition of a proffer requiring a traffic signal warrant analysis for the proposed main entrance to the development, and the revision of certain stormwater commitments. The applicant is also proposing to remove certain proffers, including the completion of the Cold Spring Swamp drainage analysis and the Greenway Trail proffer. If approved, this amendment would reduce the density on the subject parcel from 3.59 units per acre to 2.17 units per acre. This proposal would also result in a marginal decrease within the overall density of Ford's Colony from 1.25 units per acre to 1.13 units per acre. Staff finds this proposal to be compatible with the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, and surrounding development, and recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of these proposed amendments, subject to the amended proffers. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant team is with us tonight for questions too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Polster?
Evening, Mr. Wysong. Mr. Wysong and I have gone back and forth several times this afternoon, as well as talking with the applicant's team. And the issue that we were chatting about was the two proffer amendments, 10B and 19. 19 being the coal stream and 10 being the erosion piece. And as I pointed out to him, both those proffers in the language really talks about the upstream area. And specifically on the coal stream, it talks about the enlargement of the culvert, where we've seen flooding from hurricanes and the closing of that road. And so my question is whether you were able to get back with the stormwater division folks to, in fact, find out whether or not the staff considered the upstream issues and the increase in the culvert size and the flooding pieces on the upstream side.
So stormwater staff did review the proposal, including the removal of those proffers, and didn't raise any comments about them being removed. I don't think they've had a chance to look at that specific question that you had sent this afternoon.
And I understand that, given how late in the day it was and in the holiday in between things, even though we've been going back and forth through emails. So that's an issue for me that I'll talk about in the discussion period then.
Any other questions? Mr. Croft?
Evening, Mr. Wysong. Just a quick question. Several of the proffers from the original application are requested to be removed, and one of them is the proffer that limits building heights for buildings no longer shown on the new proposed master plan. And my question is, if down the road, if this is approved and then down the road additional space becomes available, or the applicant, the owner, decides to construct additional buildings, I'm assuming that anything that would have been covered by this former height limitation would require a master plan amendment. They wouldn't be able to just go in and build a taller building. Is that correct?
That's correct. A new building that's not shown on the master plan would require a master plan amendment.
Even if it was replacing the footprint of an existing building from the master plan?
Yes, it would need to be shown on the amended master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? I have one. Mr. Wysong, just to be clear, there is already a master plan for CCRC in place for this particular parcel, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That dates to 2008.
Yes.
So the proposal in front of us is to change some aspects of that. But right now, this developer, Fry, can go in and build a CCRC under the terms of the 2008 master plan without any legislative action.
Correct.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We'll move ahead with the public hearing. The public hearing was opened at our last meeting, November 3rd, and then postponed until tonight. So, Mr. Getty, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Hallman and Ladies and gentlemen, members of the commission, I'm Vernon Getty. It's my pleasure to be here tonight representing the applicant. Also here are Rock Bell, Vice President of Development with Fry Properties, and Jason Grimes with AES, the consulting engineers. Steve Winter with Retirement Unlimited hoped to be here, but unfortunately had to deal with an emergency in Florida and was not able to get back in time for the meeting. Fry Properties is a Norfolk-based company founded and owned by Bart Fry in all aspects of real estate development. The pretty picture you see up there is their headquarters in the historic Freemason section of Norfolk. Their two signature developments are the East Beach development in Norfolk, which was a collaboration with the Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority, and the Cavalier Residences at the historic Cavalier Hotel in Virginia Beach. This is East Beach. Both of them are award-winning developments. This shows one of the awards, the Charter Awards from the Congress for New Urbanism for East Beach, but pictures of both right here. Their developments pride themselves in world-class master planning, pedestrian streetscapes, great architecture, placemaking, respect for the land, and quality of life. RUI is a company based in Roanoke, Virginia, which has its roots back in the 1960s when the Fralin and Waldron families joined forces, initially in the construction business. In the 70s, they created a company that got into the skilled nursing business, and in 1984, RUI was created. It's a third-generation family business at this point. Here are RUI's communities, 10 of which are in Virginia and 2 in Florida. At RUI Communities, there are a number of innovative programs. They have RUI University, which is lifelong learning opportunities. Lux Unlimited is salon and spa services. They have home health, private duty, and therapy in their Care Impact program, fine dining with the Taste of RUI. They have rehab if needed, and even Leash on Life, which is pet care. So as Mr. Haldeman pointed out, there is an approved master plan for this property, and it is shown here. It allows 741 units, rooms, and you will see it is primarily large institutional buildings with large parking fields. It is a somewhat intense development on the property. There is the new master plan developed by Fry. It's a total of 516 units, and you'll see it's a very different plan. There's the RUI institutional building in sort of the top left, and then the Fry development on the rest of the property. Primary differences, there are 225 fewer units in the Fry proposal. There are more single-family and multifamily independent units and substantially fewer apartments. The vision for the project is to create a continuing care retirement community with superior design and quality and standards, with amenities, facilities, and service that make it somewhere you can age in place and move up as your needs dictate. Touch on a couple things here. The service, it's a sort of unique partnership. The services and amenities will be shared by folks who live in the Fry residences in the RUI facility called the Morgan. You'll see at Forge Village. It creates a unique relationship. It is age restricted, and the Fry homes will utilize universal design features. So every multi-story home, for example, will have an elevator shaft built into it in its initial construction, whether or not the elevator is actually installed at that point. So it can be installed when the resident would like it and needs it. There'll be wider hallways. There'll be backing for grab bars and restrooms and the like, and it's designed to allow you to age in place to the maximum extent possible. And the master plan is based on traditional town-making principles we'll see in just a moment, with narrow streets, alley-loaded garages, and a multitude of parks and paths. There have been a number of questions the last couple of days. This is a different model of a continuing care retirement community than many of us are used to seeing. It is different than, say, Williamsburg Landing, that is a life care community. Here, there will not be the large entrance fees that you pay upon moving into the community and get all or part back when you die or move out. The RUI facility will be on a month-to-month lease arrangement. It lessens the financial burden of moving in and gives great flexibility of when you go in and out. The Fry independent living sections, you will actually own your home and all that entails, as opposed to living in a place you have a right to occupy. It gives consumers a different choice. It's a different model. There are shared amenities and services available between the two. Any resident in the Fry portion on a subscription or fee basis can, on an a la carte basis, sign up for any of the services I mentioned in the RUI facility. RUI will pay Fry a fee for the privilege of all of their residents using all the amenities in the Fry portion of the development. So it really is a great symbiotic relationship. Touch very quickly on a couple elements of the master plan. The main entrance is at the Firestone Road intersection, and it will be a gated community. There'll be a gate right here. This second entrance, while it will be a temporary construction entrance, it will ultimately be an emergency access entrance only. It has the full 150-foot community character corridor buffer. This shows the street system. The red are the primary roads. Blue are the alleyways that will go throughout the development. And green are parks and paths you'll see scattered throughout the development. I'll go very quickly through these. A few unique features. If the fire department blesses it, there is a possibility of an entrance feature, which is actually an apartment over the entrance into the living area. Shows where you're approaching the clubhouse, which would be this building, going down the main street. This area that was formerly, I think, a maintenance building, would have a wall courtyard townhouse section based on example from Bruges, Belgium. Finally, the point down here, the peninsula, would be its own sort of very private community. There is a system of alleys throughout and unique pedestrian gateways, part of the placemaking for the development. There will be 8 different home types in the development, and they are scattered throughout and mixed throughout. There won't be a single family section, a townhouse section, and so on. You will see they are scattered throughout the development. And I know these images are in your materials, so I'll go through these fairly quickly. RUI facility, this is a picture of one of their other facilities. It will be a traditional looking building, as you've all seen many of these, I believe, and these are pictures of their interior. See, very high quality. You'll see a dining facility, a living room type area, library, billiard room, card room, inside of some of the units, and then the spa, the workout facility, and another meeting room, sort of movie room. As I mentioned, there are amenities in the RUI section available to all, including fine dining. There'll be a bar, lounge, cafe, bistro, a salon, spa, fitness center, wellness services. There'll be classes through the RUI University program. Activity, card and billiard rooms, physical therapy, and transportation. In the Fry section of the development, you'll have a clubhouse with pool and fitness facility. You'll have all, which is the rage right now, pickleball courts for folks to enjoy pickleball, multi-use paths and trails, parks scattered throughout, event space and public gathering spaces as shown. Fire pits will be scattered through the parks, and the property is golf cart accessible. So there's been a bit of discussion the last few days about stormwater management, so I did want to touch on that briefly. The new stormwater management plan is based on the new design for this project, and it is very different than the existing stormwater management plan. It's in accordance with new state stormwater regulations and adopted watershed management plans. And contrast the existing plan with those large institutional buildings we saw in the big parking fields, tried a very innovative at the time stormwater management plan. It was based entirely on infiltration. There was extensive use of porous pavement and some other features, but there were no stormwater management ponds. And there was some concern at the time. It was untried and how effective it would be, which led to the proffer, I think Mr. Polster has mentioned, on stream monitoring. Saying we don't believe that is a concern with the new plan. The new plan includes a proven best management practices in series, which include bioretention ponds, filtera features, dry swales, and other excuse me, LID type features, and several wet ponds that will serve the facility, all of which are tried and true stormwater management practices. The stormwater plan calls for 7 special stormwater criteria measures is called for under the Powhatan Creek watershed study, and then 5 additional SSC measures to further enhance environmental protection. So it is a very good stormwater management pond. The issue on News Road and Cold Spring Swamp that has come up, we frankly thought that the work there had been done. There was a VDOT project to address the flooding, and so we thought simply no longer necessary. So traffic is another issue. This proposal generates significantly less traffic than you would get under the approved master plan. It has been studied extensively. There was the study with the original rezoning. There's a 2020 Kimley Horn study done in connection with the Ford's Colony Proffer Amendment case that was approved last year. And then the applicant's traffic consultant, Dexter Williams, has taken yet another look at it. All the required traffic improvements are proffered, and as sort of an added layer of protection, the applicant has proffered a new signal warrant analysis up front to ensure that the traffic signal at the entrance isn't required right away. And then there's a second proffer of another check later in the development. So traffic issues are addressed. We obviously agree with staff's recommendation of approval. This is a significantly less intense development than the approved plan. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It generates less traffic. The needed improvements are proffered. It's a positive fiscal impact to the county with no school children in the development. I mean, to the order of probably $1.8 million a year, I think. The potential impacts from this development are mitigated by proffers. It'll have a superior design, and it's brought to you by 2 well-established Virginia-based companies known for very high-quality work. So with that, we would ask you respectfully to recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors, and happy to answer any questions you have of us.
Questions, any of the commissioners?
Good evening, Mr. Getty. You're right on the traffic issue. Most of the citizen comments that I've seen in the emails dealt with traffic concerns on News Roads. I did see that you have a separate construction entrance for vehicles, but realistically, this project is going to take an extended amount of time before you're built out with the coming and going of a lot of heavy equipment. Even with the construction, separate construction entrance, are there any measures being considered to mitigate the construction vehicle impact on News Road?
I would defer that to Jason and Rock, I think.
Simple answer is no. I think there's probably some consideration for how that traffic could be handled. Obviously, the primary entrance would be used for the initial construction, and the largest construction is going to occur with the large Morgan building that RUI is going to build, which is going to be part of the initial kind of construction of the first phase of the development. Most of the rest of the development will be more traditional single-family home building construction traffic. So we don't, ideally, it's not going to be the large cranes and a lot of earth-moving and dump truck equipment that would be using that. It'd be more of the smaller construction for the homes. So we have not considered it something separate for that, but that's probably something we can look into.
That's, there are the concern, and I apologize for not bringing it up earlier, but it sort of crossed my mind as I was reviewing the proposal this evening. But, some of my concerns have to do with the large vehicles that haul bulldozers and cranes and other things. And if they're all on News Road, even though there's a separate construction entrance, that is going to significantly hamper the traffic flow. And, I've seen, other cases that have come before us that have done things like said, well, we'll have our workforce park off-site in a certain area and we'll shuttle them to the construction, or, maybe have earlier access for the heavy equipment that wouldn't interfere with school and work traffic to and from the Powhatan and other developments around there. So just a suggestion, because like I said, the vast majority of the citizen comments that I've reviewed have to do with the traffic issues. Thank you.
Happy to look at it.
Any other questions? Ms. Leverance?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Has Fry developed any properties in a CCRC environment like this
This will be
before?
their
This would be the first
foray
Okay.
into the CCRC world.
My next question has to do with the independent living units.
Yeah.
Would the owners of the house also own the lot underneath the house?
Yes.
So it's not going to be like a condo situation where the homeowners association is providing property management?
There will be a homeowners association that I think will provide property maintenance, but you will own your lot in fee simple in your house.
Okay,
all
so
that
they wouldn't
entails.
provide mowing and
Actually, I think,
leaf man.
yeah, they are thinking about a maintenance-free option.
And then, would there be any arrangement whereby the homeowners in the independent living section would have priority over somebody coming in from the outside for an assisted living space, for example?
I don't think there is at present, no. I think it's subject to availability.
Yeah, I have something, Mr. Getty. You and I spoke yesterday, and that was great, but I just thought of a couple other things, and along with Ms. Leverance. My understanding of continued care communities is if I live in a house there, and I need to go to your memory care or your assisted living, that I have priority over people from the outside coming in. And you just indicated that that's not.
It depends on the model. I mean, at a place like Williamsburg Landing, where you have paid that substantial entrance
Okay.
fee, in a life care community, I think that would be the case.
Right, you're not having that here,
We're
that's
not
right, I'm
having
sorry.
that
Yeah, I just misunderstood. Could I just ask an upfront question? What are the prices gonna be on these homes?
I don't know
'Cause I
that
got
they
really
are
scared
set
reading the
at this
numbers.
point. Rock, if you'd like to.
Good evening. As you know, construction pricing has gone
I understand.
insane over the last. So we believe that they will be, moderately high-end. They're not going to be, you know, completely custom homes. We're going to try to minimize our construction costs by, you know, modularizing as much as we can. But if I were to try to tell you a price point today, I would surely be wrong. And I know that's not answering your question.
I'm just kind of concerned about who's going to be able to afford to live there. And I know construction's gone up. I live in Colonial Heritage. It's gone up like 40%. It's ridiculous. But I also think about my friends and neighbors and so forth and say, if you need to go to this place, if it's $700,000, and I found that number in the file, some number that, and if you divide it, it's
One way, not necessarily-
$700,000.
And I can't tell you prices, but with the variety of housing types,
Right.
there will be a variety of prices as
Oh,
well.
I understand
There's
that
some
part.
From very
Yeah.
small bungalow-type units to full single-family
I was just
homes.
concerned with the lower end, with
Yeah.
the lower end going up. I mean, there's plenty of
Yeah.
people here that can buy houses over $1 million, but there's a lot of people here that can't buy anywhere near that, and I was just curious.
That's one of the reasons for the mix
What's your
of
market?
housing types.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Any further questions? Mr.
I do have a
Rose?
question. I want to come back to the commissioner's question about traffic.
Yeah.
You have a fair amount of experience developing these communities. I assume you could have expected the type of reaction in terms of construction traffic that we're now seeing from the communities around. I'm a little surprised that you're so unprepared to answer that question about the construction traffic and are now only saying, yes, we'll think about it. So why was there no planning for construction traffic? Given the expectation that you have communities here that are going to be heavily impacted by the construction traffic?
Obviously, there was thought given to construction traffic in that there's a separate construction entrance, but the traffic comes off News Road. That's the only road you can use to access this property.
But
And-
you just suggested that you'll consider this issue
Yeah,
now.
absolutely, in terms of things like hours and, I mean, I think with big construction like the RUI facility, the heavy equipment is brought in once, it stays on site until the project's done, and then it's brought out. That's not the type of thing that goes in and out every day. But if there are other things that can be done in terms of the hours, we're happy to look at it. That, frankly, is not something that typically comes up at the zoning stage.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. O'Connor?
Good evening, Mr. Getty. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, sir?
Can we just talk about, and maybe this is more for Mr. Grimes than you, but just would like to understand, there's been a lot of comments too about stormwater, so obviously we've changed that plan, so, and Mr. Polster's well-versed, so if I misspeak, you can correct me. But can we just talk a little bit about the intensity of the development now versus before, and, you know, just the impacts on the watershed in that respect?
Hopefully you can hear me. So clearly, I think Vernon, I kind of prepped him a little bit for this, but there was some significant changes. Obviously, the original plan had a few duplex-type units scattered kind of around the perimeter of the project, but mainly it was institutional apartment-style buildings with large parking fields. So from that respect, we actually brought in someone who was kind of looking at cutting-edge ways to do stormwater, had brought them in as a consultant on the original plan, and they were bringing some ideas to the area that had not been tried before. Subsequently, we've seen some of those things tried and with varying degrees of success. But that said, they lent them, so the project was more of an institutional type of development where there was large buildings and large fields of parking, which you see with normal commercial development, which lended itself to trying to kind of do these innovative things with the parking lots and trying to treat the water under the parking lots. What we've kind of moved to is a single kind of institutional type of building with more residential scale development around it, which is there's less impervious cover associated with that type of development, and therefore the the types of stormwater management that we're looking at using are different. I don't know if that answers your question, but that was kind of the different thought process. We tried to kind of take the original proffers and see if we could apply them, but because of the significant change in the intensity of the use, it didn't really lend itself to working for this type of development.
And then for the proposed site plan, it'll be curb and gutter, drop inlets, pipe, that type of thing versus.
I mean, we'll see some of the stuff we're seeing in newer developments now. So the new stormwater regulations, state of Virginia, require you to have treatment trains. So the stormwater doesn't just get drained to a pond and then discharged out to the creek. It goes through a series of infiltration measures. It'll go through bioretentions, LID swales. The folks will have rain barrels. People will have rain gardens in their yards. There'll be smaller kind of direct treatment on and around lots that will ultimately discharge to the larger pond facilities, which kind of gives your stormwater one ability to have more quality removal of potential pollutants. It also slows the water flow down, limits potential flooding off-site, and allows the ponds actually allow us to kind of help mitigate any kind of potential issues for maintenance issues, which was the original stormwater plan. One of the concerns that were raised, probably rightfully so, from what we've seen with porous pavement, is that if that fails, there was no fail-safe for where that water would go. So that was one of the reasons we started looking at. We'd actually left areas on the original master plan to go back and add ponds if we had issues with stormwater.
Ms. Leverance?
I just thought of another question. The positive financial impact that this project would have, am I correct in assuming that the majority of that will come from the institutional portion of the project, and that the contributions from the assisted living nursing home would offset the independent homes, which typically do not have?
I would have to look at the study to be sure. I would think with no school children, the independent homes would be a positive as well. Certainly the larger impact would probably come from the RUI facility.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Getty.
Thank you very much.
The chair was remiss in not asking for disclosures earlier. Mr. Polster.
I've had conversations with Mr. Grimes and Mr. Getty.
I've spoken with Mr.
I spoke with Mr. Getty yesterday. Thank you.
As did I. Mr. Getty's been a busy man.
Only one who
Okay.
didn't. Sorry. I know you did, sorry.
We now have time for public comment on this subject. Residents may speak up to 5 minutes on this subject. If you represent a group, you may have 15 minutes. I have several speaker cards, the first of which is Ms. Susan Tisdale.
Hi,
Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Susan Tisdale. I live at 209 Governor Edward Knott Court, and that's in Powhatan Secondary. I ask you to reconsider the size and scope of the planned development by Fry Properties off News Road. I've lived off News Road for over 26 years. In 2018, over 500 residents signed a petition against a small commercial development at Windsor Mead Way, Monticello Avenue, which intersects News Road, due to traffic concerns. Even VDOT had the same concerns. Thankfully, the Planning Commission voted to deny that commercial development. Fast forward to today, and here we are talking about a new planned community which will generate an estimated 2,000 trips per day down News Road, a small 2-lane road that serves 3 major neighborhoods currently: Spring Hill, Ford's Colony, and Powhatan Secondary. There are no sidewalks along News Road, no stoplights at any of these neighborhoods, no center turn lanes. I can understand a planned community of restricted lot sizes in order to reduce the overall traffic load, but that isn't what Fry Properties is proposing. Their master plan includes densely clustered home sites, along with a skilled nursing facility, on a rural road that is designed to be a community character corridor. It doesn't seem logical or fit with the neighboring communities. At the beginning of this year, the Comprehensive Plan Working Group recommended denying a land use change to high density use for this parcel. As a result, The updated comprehensive plan keeps it at low density R4. And I realize that in order to achieve a lower density, the use as it's currently zoned, many of the acres that are already in the RPA for this parcel will be used to offset the clustered carriage homes, apartments, and skilled nursing facility in the proposed development. One of the concerns is the green space buffer proposed across the entrance of Spring Hill behind the continuing care facility. With a paved trail along News Road taking up a portion of the 150-foot buffer, will the facility be obscured by trees and natural growth? Spring Hill residents are not only concerned with traffic, but also how these large structures will be obscured from their neighborhood. I'm not against development of the parcel. I'm against the number of homes being proposed, the commercial nature of the skilled nursing facility in a rural area, the inability for News Road and Monticello Avenue to handle the increase in traffic without significant road upgrades. If this development is to move forward, why not make sidewalks along News Road from Spring Hill to Monticello Marketplace a condition of development? Why not require road upgrades before it becomes unbearable for the residents along News Road? Before final approval of the proposed project, please take the time to drive down News Road and experience the current traffic flow personally. Try exiting Powhatan Secondary on the south side traveling west on News Road in the morning or around 5 p.m. Trees obscure traffic traveling westbound. Try exiting Spring Hill with a curve that makes it difficult to gauge oncoming traffic. The road needs to be widened to allow for turn lanes now, not 10 years from now. This proposed development's impact on local traffic will be much greater than the smaller commercial development that was denied by the Planning Commission just a few years ago. I urge you to reconsider approval for the proposed development as it has been presented by the developer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ms. Leanne Sutton. Good evening.
I'm Leanne Sutton. I live at 201 Old Carriage Way in Powhatan Secondary. First of all, thank you. I know that your decisions are difficult and you cannot please everybody. So I come with a unique perspective of living on the corner of Powhatan Secondary and Old Carriage Way. My house is one of the very few houses that has a driveway that exit onto Powhatan Secondary Road. Because I'm on the corner, any window, any door, if you're standing in my backyard, you're looking at Powhatan Secondary. If you're standing in my front yard, you're looking at Powhatan Secondary. And what I think I've heard tonight is the discussion about the traffic on News Road. It's dark, it's windy, it's difficult. There are only two exits out of our neighborhood. One's News Road, one's Monticello. Both of them are very difficult. I've lived in my house since 2001, so I've seen the changes that have come about. It's alarming to me that we're looking at studies from 2008 and 2017. The stoplights that are on Monticello are difficult to navigate at certain times of day, 5 o'clock and in the morning. We have teenagers going to high school. We have people going to work. You can't always get through the stoplights. And what happens is people start cutting through Powhatan Secondary Road. So my concern is with the traffic, the increased traffic through my neighborhood, directly in front of my house. So dozens of people walk on that road, dozens. There's no sidewalk. Even more traffic goes through that road. Emergency vehicles use our road as a cut through. There's already a high level of cut through traffic from News Road to Monticello. If you look at a map, you might see that there's another exit through the cluster houses, but that has a permanent immobile barrier. You can't go through there. So literally only two exits, and both very difficult. To increase the difficulty level at either end is a huge problem. Recently, there's been development all along that corridor. Veterans Park has been improved. The stores have been improved. The roads, not so much. So you've heard about the News Road traffic, 2-lane, windy, hilly, no lights. It's dark. Lots of people have died on that road. That is a treacherous road. The speed from the people that cut through our subdivision, that go past my house has been complained to the police department too. They've put up electronic monitoring signs for speed. That has not improved the conditions. There have been increased patrols in our neighborhood. That has not improved conditions. I see the moms, you know, like I said, I can see a good section of Powhatan Secondary no matter where I am in my house. I've seen the moms have to push the strollers off into the grass because, you know, some of it's kids, some of it's not kids. People going way too fast. We've had situations where we've had to close the bridge and close one side of our entrance exit because we've had dam problems there. That road was closed for, I think it was 3 years. So if we have increased traffic, we're going to have increased dam problems. We're going to have increased road problems, not just the safety of our kids, not just the safety of the pedestrians, not just the safety of the drivers, but our road structure itself can't handle any more traffic through there. We had to pay for the dam, for fixing the dam. That came out of our homeowners association. So who's going to pay if there's damage to the dam because of increased traffic? That will be something I shoulder. I have the unique situation where my property values will be affected the most if traffic increases on that road, and it will. And the dump trucks that come from Monticello, they won't go all the way to News Road. They're going to cut through our neighborhood while this is being built. So there's a lot at stake here, not just News Road traffic, not just Centerville to News Road traffic, not just Monticello to News Road traffic. That one small residential road is going to have a big impact if there's any increase in traffic at all. And the numbers, 2,000 trips a day predicted, that's a lot. That's too much for our neighborhood to handle. Is that my 5 minutes? But I have so much more. But I thank you for taking that into consideration because I don't think anybody has really brought that up. But please think about that a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker is Ms. Kay Krapfel. Oh, Kropf. Krapfel. Thought you had a relative. I'm sorry for.
Well, they really said it all. I am concerned mostly for the traffic. News Road will not be able to handle it. They'd have to widen it. Monticello, it took me 20 minutes from Powhatan Secondary to get here. Those lights, those 3 lights, they're already impossible. So why are we still growing? This place is starting to look like a suburb like Chicago. I moved here because it was a historic, quiet, only 2 stoplights in the whole town. And now look at it. And we have empty buildings all over the place that are empty and have never been rented. And now we want to build more. I don't understand it. Where is the water coming from? We have in the paper all the time that we had to shower during the drought. They ask us not to water the lawn, to take a quick shower, don't flush the toilet. What's going to happen? I don't understand what's going on in this town. It's got to stop somewhere. And they said it all about Powhatan Secondary. I don't need to add any more to that. I just feel like we got to look at the area. We want it to be historical, not another suburb, and it's starting to look that way. And that's really about what I have to say. I am definitely against, and to be honest, the first time they wanted to build there, I thought they turned it down because it was a swamp area, that the water, you know, and the wildlife, our trees, what's going to happen to that? That's what I have to say, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. David Banks.
Won't take up nearly my time. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I was impressed by the road-related proffers, but I noticed total absence of any part of this application or discussion that involves the agreement by VDOT to create those changes. I would request that before any consideration of approval of a massive community like this, that VDOT be called to agree that they will create those changes, and if they won't, the road can't handle it. I think that's already been pointed out, that yes, what's in the proffers, the turn lanes, the widening, the traffic lights, fine, but if VDOT thinks otherwise, then it's not going to happen. You know, the road study in 2008, the road study in 2017 has no relationship to the traffic today. So that was all I had to say.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kevin Fleming.
Thank you very much. My name is Kevin Fleming. I'm at 228 Old Carriageway, which is part of the Powhatan Secondary Development. I'm going to kind of pony on some of the things that have already been said. Basically, Powhatan Secondary, the development I'm in is about 900 units, but it has 5 entrances and exits onto different roads. We've got 2 going onto News Road, 1 going onto Old News Road, and 2 that go onto Monticello. So we have multiple ways in and out of Powhatan Secondary. So it's a fairly large development. But what you're talking about here is a development of about over 500 units with only 1 permanent entrance and exit onto News Road, which is basically a winding country road that's not divided. So that's one of the things that I want to mention. Talking about Powhatan Secondary Road, the road between News Road and Monticello. This summer, we had a car accident where someone hit a child on that road who was cutting through. And, you know, VDOT did put up signs that basically, you know, slow children signs, but that's basically all they did. And, you know, we're just waiting for it to happen. Our pool and our community center are right next to that road. So when people have to cross Powhatan Secondary from the neighborhoods to get to the pool and the community center, and kids are back and forth all summer. And people fly through that road. They take it as if they're still want to go 40, 45 miles an hour like they were going on News Road. And it's really rough. It's really bad. The other thing, speaking about the dam by Rennick's Pond, you know, our community had to pay for repair to that dam. And that road is limited by the amount of weight it can take. And if we're just going to keep increasing traffic over that road more and more and more, you know, I don't think that our community should be paying for the repairs to that dam that will constantly need to be done. And when they're done, we need to drain the ponds, we need to drain Rennick's Pond, and we need to basically shut that road down and then funnel all that traffic onto News Road. So that can be a possible issue. The other question that I had was, you know, Ford's Colony has multiple entrances they have News, Ironbound, Centerville. And so I was just wondering, are there other developments that this size, with about 500 units, that only have 1 entrance allowed onto a winding country road? Do we have other developments this size in the community that do that? And we're talking about a road, you know, with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit right there. And then just looking at the traffic, right now, for the last 2 years, basically, we've been in COVID. So we've had less people commuting in the morning, actually, and less people coming home at night than we've had in the past. And we're building up more and more and more, and we're going to see more and more traffic as time goes on. So those were some of my comments and some of my questions. So we probably need a new traffic study to take into consideration the growth of the community. We need to consider the stoplight as being, you know, really probably ironclad. We need a stoplight. It needs to be approved before we go forward. And, you know, we also need to study if we're going to need to widen News Road, because that's going to have a massive impact to, you know, the wetlands and the drainage that we need to to keep everything healthy in terms of stormwater. So I thank you very much for your time, and those are my comments.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Lisa Schmidt?
I'm Lisa Schmidt. I live at 108 Powhatan Overlook in Powhatan Secondary. And every morning, as I'm driving to the hospital, Riverside Hospital, Doctor's Hospital, I have to pull out onto News Road. I turn right, and every morning I think it's clear. And then as I look back one more time, I see these lights, and they're always right on my tail as I'm pulling out. So I feel like I take my life in my hands every morning. If I try to turn out on a Monticello, I can't usually turn left without, again, racing around the corner to get out there. So we are already limited, as you know. I'm also concerned because since I am a healthcare worker, of the people who will be living in the community, the CCRC, and pulling out onto News Road, and they also will have people flying up on their tail, and they may be 80 or 90 years old, and their reaction time is not quite the same as mine. So I worry about those people being in car accidents as well. Also, my property is very much adjacent to this community. You can actually see my, the lines of my house lot up there, and I worry that the deer that are already, just going crazy through our neighborhood, I think I actually have a herd of deer that comes through every day, will no longer have a place to be. So, and it's not just gonna be the deer. There'll be a lot of other animals that are displaced, and there's not gonna be much room left for them in our side without just coming through our neighborhoods and living off our backyards and front yards. We also, since we've lived there for 20 years, have seen a difference in the Chesapeake Bay Act taking away our property and telling us that we can't build anything in our backyard. So I just wonder how the changes that will be in this area with the CCRC will affect the Chesapeake Bay Act as well. And I wondered if that's been consulted and brought into discussion at all. So, and the last point I want to make is, since I am working in a hospital, I see the difficulty that we have with staffing. I know that many of the staff that will be required have to come from outside our area because there isn't always appropriate housing that they can afford within our community. So they have to come up from Newport News and Hampton and Surrey. And again, it's also, draining on the staff that are in all the different facilities that are here. What happens is they leave, they'll go to work in a new place, then they'll leave from there and go to another place, whoever can pay the most. So, the staffing issue is a concern, and I would hope that would be considered in this project as well. I have worked at Williamsburg Landing. I've worked at Patriots Colony. My stepfather was in Brookdale. So I've been to all these communities, and I have seen the staff leave each time. So that is a concern for us. Lastly, I just want to say that the road itself, with the construction, will have a lot of trucks coming and going because you have to displace this dirt somewhere, and they will be going over the roads, and the roads will be destroyed even more than they are now, which are very difficult at times with seeing, potholes, and there'll be more as it's torn up. So please consider all of these things when you're making a decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Reagan Walsh? I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
I'm Regina Walsh, and I live at 4599 Beacon Hill, Powhatan Village. Actually, I'm kind of winging this because I didn't think you would take comments. But I've been trying to read the proposal, And I must say, I'm somewhat alarmed by the fact that what we're looking at is a proposal upon a revision, which is upon a revision, which is upon a revision. And to me, from a business standpoint, that seems extremely sloppy. And in my opinion, unacceptable. You put down what you want and what it's going to be, not what was proposed 2008. What are we looking at now? And putting it down in a intelligent, easy form read for people to understand. Because believe me, I've tried this gobbledygook, and that's exactly what it is. It's just a lot of words, and trying to find substance is not that easy. I too am concerned about the traffic. I find it alarming that there is a proposal to waiver a new study. How can you do that? You're impacting people's lives. Men, women, children, old people, young people. And to accept a waiver on something as important as the traffic on News Road is, to me, it's well, it's inexcusable. But in addition to everything people have said about the traffic, one thing that has not been discussed or mentioned that I am aware of is, what about emergency vehicles? I live in Powhatan Village. My unit is right along News Road. I hear police sirens, I hear EMS trucks, I hear fire trucks back and forth on News Road. You put in a retirement community, I would think that the need for emergency care will increase. And what are you going to do with these fire trucks and these rescue squads? They're going to be impacted by the poor attention that's being given to the News Road traffic. And unless you live there, I don't see how you can find that acceptable. I just don't. And I think it'd be irresponsible on your parts not to demand that a new report be given. Forget the revision upon the revision upon the revision. One that is now 2022. And get it done. And answer people's concerns. I mean, I don't see in any of this that you've addressed people's concerns that apparently were requested back in 2008. You're still asking the same questions. Have you gotten answers? Have you demanded answers? It doesn't appear that you have. Now, I don't know that you've been on the board since 2008. Maybe some of you have, maybe some of you haven't. But if you have, then shame on you. And if if this is your first year or your second year, then demand information, demand the facts. Because what is being presented here is not facts. And I'm sorry, with all due respect, your answers are vacuous. You don't even have the answers that some of these gentlemen and these ladies have asked. You don't know. Why? Because you don't live here. Because you don't care. And because you're doing a sloppy job. And you can smirk all you want.
Mrs. Walsh, please address your comments to the Planning Commission.
Oh, you? Okay.
Thank you.
I've said enough.
Thank you very much. We don't have any more speaker cards, but if anybody else would like to address the commission on this subject, you're welcome to do so at this time. Yes, sir. Sure.
My name is Jason Smith. I live at 124 Old Carriageway in Powhatan Secondary. Going to kind of kick the tires on the same thing a lot of other people said, but have a few minutes, so I guess I'll reiterate it a bit. I've lived in my house now for a little bit over 4 years, and to the point of not having a new traffic study, so on and so forth, going off of 2008. I mean, traffic has gotten horrible on that road in just the past 4 years. We can talk about emergency vehicles, so on and so forth. 2 weeks ago, there was an accident on News Road behind my neighbor's house, and it completely shook our house. The sound was deafening. It was, and obviously that kind of stuff happens all over the place, but just to go on with how dangerous the road can be, how it is at night, it's scary. Thinking that the only way that it's going to possibly get better is, as the other gentleman said, they're going to have to widen the road. I live off a News Road. It's going to basically go into my backyard at that point, which I'm not personally a fan of, but there you are. The thinking back to why is this going on so long? It was initially approved in 2008, which at that point, for whatever reason, right at the onset of the financial crisis, here we are 13 years talking about it. It's changed from different, it's been reiterated from a bunch of apartment units now to housing. Love talking in front of people. I think a couple of those points are, yeah, construction prices, to your point, have definitely gone up, but right now financing is really low and housing prices are, as you're saying to your point, are quite high right now. So maybe that's a great time to go ahead and push on this and build these houses. From what I understand, there's new retirement housing being built in an old shopping center by Busch Gardens. A bunch of apartments were just built right up the road on Monticello. I don't personally see the benefit of what this is going to bring to the community. Great, less kids, so it's going to not hurt schooling and so forth. You're going to get new tax revenue from the people buying the houses and so forth, but if we're going to continue building in James City County or Williamsburg City or so forth, I don't think this is necessarily the route to go. It should push people to want to move to the area to bring other economic benefits to where, people like myself in general that live in Williamsburg, but prior to COVID and so forth, I drove to Richmond every day for work, or people were having to drive to Norfolk or somewhere else, but people are still choosing to move here because they do love the area. But at some point, more people are just going to start moving off, being that, why should I take the hour drive to Richmond if basically living in Williamsburg is the same exact thing, which was kind of what I was hoping to get away from. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Sure.
Good evening, Board. My name is Bob Myers. I live at 143 Waters Edge Drive, which is part of Powhatan Secondary. All right. So the Powhatan Secondary Road is, man, it's busy. And I can see traffic coming and going and increasing. Every morning between 7:30 and 8:30, I like to take a walk over to Veterans Park and trying to cross Monticello. I'm taking my life into my own hands, okay? It's a terrible exit, and so that, I can just see more traffic coming. It's a shortcut, okay? There's no doubt about it, it's a shortcut, all right? So that's one issue I have. I just see it, and the other issue I really have is, do you really need it? Do we really need to have that construction? Not just the construction, but the facility, okay? I feel sorry for the poor critters that are living there that are going to be pushed out. I wonder about water. I'm a little bit of a water freak, okay? And so I just wonder, what's it going to do to the water in the area? You can try and do all you want, but I heard we're about 8 inches down below already this year in our water. Climate change is having an effect. we just don't need to have another construction and place and residential place of any kind within this area. That's all. Okay, you've heard all the information on News Road. Okay, it is busy as hell. There's no doubt about it. It's just not necessary. It just is not necessary for another facility within the James City County area like that. Once you put it up, who takes care of it, who maintains it, you know, what happens? So that's all I want, that's all I want to say. Again, I'm over there in Waterford. It's busy. That road's busy. It's going to get busier. I'll even buy the duck donuts and stand down there in the corner with you guys with coffee and duck donuts. And you can watch the trucks go up and down in the morning, the big semis. Okay? Already I'm Monticello. All right? I'll buy you breakfast if you want to stand out there and watch them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir, in the back.
Good evening, Eric Ganser, 4280 Beamer's Ridge. My lot backs up to News Road. I hear the constant hum of cars going back and forth along News Road, along with the aforementioned emergency vehicles. Part of my exercise routine is actually to cross News Road, where the Powhatan secondary intersection is. And, well, that can be somewhat sporty at times, depending on, you know, the flow of cars. It's like playing Frogger going across. But I just like you to consider the traffic implications that we're looking at here. So, please, just want to reiterate the traffic bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a hand up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Debbie Wright. I live at 450 Thompson Lane. That is very close to the corner of Centerville and News Road. And there's 2 points that I wanted to make that I felt like really haven't been brought up. It's not just Powhatan Secondary who's concerned about this. There's other areas at the end of News Road who are also concerned. And I think you would need to look very carefully at News Road to see if that road could be widened, because there are houses right pretty much up against it. So if that's a consideration in putting in another turn lane or whatever, I think that needs to be looked at carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Beth Emerson. I live at 4052 Powhatan Secondary. And I've lived in that community for 27 years, and I've lived on both sides of News Road. One of the unique perspectives, and the road has continued to get worse. But it's not just the construction, which we do know will take a long time to complete that number of units. It's 55 is young. I mean, let's talk about the age. 55 is young. These residents that are going to be living there are vital parts of our community. They are active, they are working, they are volunteering, they are shopping, they are dining, they are in and out constantly, like most of us are today. And it's not just the residents that will be coming or the construction, it's also the staffing that will be coming up and down News Road. And I don't think that that has been mentioned. So I just mentioned the fact that it's not just construction trucks that will be going up and down, it's also the increase in our vital residents that we want to be a part of our community. We don't want them to be sequestered in their community in this new beautiful facility. We want them to be a part of our volunteers and our workforce, and that will also impact it. It's not just construction or during the construction time, but as long as that community's there, hopefully all those residents will be coming and going as well, in addition to the many staff. And I also echo the fact that it's only one entrance. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Open it for discussion among the commissioners. Mr. Polster.
I'll go first, since I had the one question that I talked about that I wanted to talk in the discussion, which are those two proffers 19 and 10B. I think most of you have seen the traffic that's gone back and forth over the weekend and then over the last. I was trying to understand why those proffers were being removed. And so finally this afternoon, I came to the conclusion after talking with staff and with the applicant that the current proposed stormwater management plan is not an issue for me. It does all the things that it should do. It conforms with the law that changed since the original set of proffers were put in place. They've done all the things I think that they're supposed to do. But what that proffer, two proffers were about, had to do with a Powhatan floodplain study that was done in 2008. And what it did is it talked about what the 100-year, 500-year rainfall was going to look like and hurricanes. And so it came to the conclusion on News Road that you're going to get more intense storms. That 100 years is going to happen more often. And so the result that Jason can talk about was in that last hurricane, he couldn't get out to go either left or right. And the only place he could get out was his parents were in Ford's Colony because the roads were closed and flooded. 4 feet of water. I've talked with the stormwater folks on this thing for the last year, is that we are getting more precipitation, and we're getting ready to redo both the Powhatan and the Yarmouth watershed plans. And I've asked that they relook the hydrology study that was done in 2008 that had these forecasts of flooding across Long Hill, Edinburgh, News Road, and John Tyler. And it comes down to the proffer 10 talks about broadening the culvert at that Coldstream Farm. And it asks that that study take place and that the environmental, now the stormwater folks, would make a determination on whether or not they needed to be done or not. The same thing is true for the News Road piece on the Powhatan stem. So what I've asked of staff, and the SRP folks were not available, was whether or not they agree with the removal of those two proffers, and that in fact there is a solution for the flooding that's going across those two roads. Now, on top of this, if you took a look at the CIP program that we approved, you'll see in the 24 timeframe a armoring across News Road in 24 for $500,000. So the problem is known, but the extent and the changes that have taken place since the 208 is what I'm asking. So does staff, in fact, agree that these two proffers should be removed, which had to do with the upstream area of the project and the impact downstream on the property? I think the applicant has taken care of the existing property pieces of that, but it's the unintended effects of the upstream. So that's my issue, and what I'd like to be able to see is that the stormwater division at least comes back to the board with an explanation or an agreement that they do concur with the removal of those two, because we don't have it tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Rapp?
Thank you. I think Mr. Haldeman's opening remarks when this case was introduced are very significant and shouldn't be not paid attention to, because what he brought up is the fact that 13 years ago, the legislative process approved a master plan for this property that included a continuing care retirement community. And so to his earlier point, this could conceivably go by right. So when this case at least came to me personally, I wanted to look at it from the standpoint of, if it's a given that a CCRC is going to go on this parcel, is this proposed amendment better, or does it mitigate any of the adverse impacts? And some of the things that jumped out to me was that there was a 40% reduction in the residential units from the original proposal to the ones we have now, that there's a fiscal impact is positive with this. The layout on the master plan, as you saw in the presentation, went from what was originally sort of looked like a scattered residential and large building component to something that's a tighter and more efficient. I still do have concerns about the traffic impacts that I brought up earlier, but I felt that the overall proposal that we're looking at this evening lessens the adverse impacts on the community when compared to the original proposal. The traffic proffers that they made include dedicated turn lanes into the retirement community as well as into some of the residential communities, study for a signal warrant at Firestone and News Road to install a traffic light, which I think would very much lessen some of the concerns that the residents have expressed, if for no other reason that it forces traffic to calm and stop rather than come zipping through there. Yesterday I did drive around News Road and the vicinity, and that 2-lane road is a problem, I think, and I think those problems need to be addressed. If I could ask Mr. Holt just a clarifying question, because I think one of the speakers, Mr. Banks, brought up a good point, and that had to do with the traffic proffers that are part of this package and what VDOT has to get involved with and what VDOT does not. And my understanding is that the vast majority of these traffic proffers for dedicated turn lanes and so on and so forth will be paid for by the developer. But could you clarify that, Mr. Holt, and also explain what, if any, approval authority VDOT would have on these proffers?
VDOT's approval authority comes down to the geometric design that's going to be, should this case be approved, that would be included in the engineering level documents. As you mentioned just now, and as referenced in the proffers, the developer will be the ones to fund the construction of and actually construct those improvements. It will not be VDOT forces. So in that respect, we won't have to wait for them, and the triggers about when those improvements would need to be constructed are in the proffers as well, and again, are a responsibility of the developer and a cost of that private development versus being a public cost. So, again, should this application be approved, should the applicant move forward to the site plan stage where the engineered level drawings are created, VDOT will review it to make sure the improvements meet the required geometrics and the required engineering standards that they have in place. But beyond that, there would not be another decision point where VDOT could come in and say something's not going to be done. They won't put anything in if it's not warranted. But again, the proffers commit to that warrant analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Leverett?
I was delighted to see the reduction in the overall number of units at first. And but my biggest concern is that we now have something other than a continuing care retirement community. We have two separate projects, in my view, and that was the reason for some of my questions earlier. We have a 55-plus residential community with a healthcare community next door. And there's no guarantee, as in most CCRCs, that the folks who move into the independent living section will have any priority access. That my understanding is that in most CCRCs, the independent living people are, at least at Patriots Colony, where my mother was for several years, they get monthly health checks. And when the time comes that it's necessary for them to seek an additional level of care, there are people in the CCRC, the healthcare professionals, who help them to make that transition. I just don't see that here. So if this were just a 55-plus community, would we support it? I don't think so. So that's my biggest concern.
Thank you.
I have the same concern for it, and that's why I went around and tried to look through Williamsburg area models for that. We had a CCRC facility at colonial heritage. And that facility is separate from the colonial heritage, even though it's on their property, but there's no guarantee of the residents in heritage being able to get a discount.
They own that property separately.
Right, but
That's
that's my
not owned
point,
by
yeah.
Colonial Heritage.
That's my
Yeah,
point about
right,
being a
exactly,
CRC
exactly.
piece of it. And-
In that case, the CCRC came second.
No, it was part of the master plan to begin with.
Oh, okay.
To use that as well as outbuildings for it. So, I mean, I had the same problem until I started to think about this and then went back for it. So, but to your point, it is an extension of another neighborhood for it. And that gives me pause too. So I'm still up in the air on that issue.
So to that point, in Richmond, in the Brandermill community, they have several continuous care facilities that, one is actually, I mean, they're both within the master plan of the community, and one is much the same model where it's just more of a rental than it is any ownership, like Williamsburg Landing, and it's a successful venture for everybody. So, you know, the folks, but there's no guarantee that if you live in the single family homes, you're gonna have a spot in there. So, you know, I think that this is, you know, I think what we're confronted here with is, you know, for the folks who are here tonight, and thank you for being here and all the emails and the comments, you know, which is the lesser of two evils? Meaning, you know, we could go with the approved master plan with higher density and more traffic, or this is another use which lessens the intensity of the use, lessens the traffic, improves the stormwater. Because, you know, I think we know the history of trying to use pervious pavers, and, you know, whether it's Food Line or whether it's the outlets, you know, we see how they fail, you know, and then we're just contributing bigger issues to this watershed. So, you know, I think this is a vast improvement over the plan that was approved in 2008. So, and I think Rich was the only one in 2008, so.
What else? I plan to support this tonight. I share everybody's concerns, the concerns of the public. I've been at that podium a number of times before. I was a planning commissioner, and in fact, I spoke out at the 2008 public hearing in opposition to this for all the reasons that you did. The traffic wasn't as bad then, but we all knew it was coming. It's not a good place for a development like this, a curve on a two-lane country road. But it's already approved. And this is a significant improvement over what was improved in 2008. The total units are going to be no more than 516. Today, they could build 741 if they wanted to. It's already approved. There's a significant reduction in traffic in this plan versus the one that's already improved. Actually, I'm repeating what Mr. O'Connor already said, so I won't go into that. But several of you spoke about the growth in the county overall, and there's more to come. We just completed another comprehensive plan revision, and the forecast, the population today is right around 79,000. The forecast is for 111,000 people in James City County in 2040 or 45. And I won't be here to see it, thank God, but you know, if you think Monticello Avenue is bad now, wait to 2045. In fact, the prediction from the comprehensive plan, the Monticello Avenue from Route 199 to Ironbound Road, which is less than a mile, in 2017 had 21,300 weekday trips, daily trips. The forecast for 2045 is 41,257, so almost going to double. Um, that's already baked in by development that's already approved. Even if we never approved another rezoning application or special use permit, that's what you're going to get. And it's frustrating. It really is. I understand exactly where you're all coming from, but this is a much, much better project than the one that's already approved. And I'm going to vote for it. No?
Just have one thing, having been in a job that was safety related for 37 years, I'm really concerned about, and I told Mr. Getty this, about the one entrance and one exit. And he told me that the second exit would just be like blocked off, but an emergency exit. I would really, really love to see another gated exit, only because I don't want to be in there if something happens on News Road at a big accident or whatever, and you've got people back there who may need help, may not need help, may need to get people in there. You need, I believe you absolutely have to have another road. I mean, I'm going to vote for it. That's not the point. The point is, I think you have to have two ways in and out of every development. And I fought for another gate at Colonial Heritage, as you know, for that reason too, with so many houses, to have a third exit.
Thank you.
That's just my opinion.
Leverage.
The figures that you just mentioned of the population growth for the county, that included full build out of the original plan for this parcel. Is that correct?
It did, and
Okay.
as did the traffic figures
Right.
that I mentioned.
Right. This may make no sense to my fellow commissioners, but there's a certain perverse streak in me that says in 13 years they have not developed this property. So the odds of them developing it now perhaps are increased. So my inclination is to wait for something even better.
When I worked on another planning commission, we had a rule, once something was approved, you had 5 years to start the project or it was gone. Something to think, something to ponder.
Make a motion that we approve Z 21-0012 and MP 21-003 Proffer and Master Plan Amendment for Ford's Colony with the conditions, and the hope that the SRP folks will be able to get back to the Board of Supervisors on their position for that upstream flooding and the removal of the two proffers.
Thank you. Mr. Holt, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Knoll,
Aye.
Mr. Polster,
Aye.
Ms. Leverins,
No.
Mr. Crop,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
I ask one clarifying thing. It's not going to change anything, but this is not to include 10 or 19. It is as they're deleted now, correct?
I'm asking that the stormwater folks provide the reason for deleting them, considering the upstream issues that those proffers asked for. That's all. And they were unable to do that.
I mean,
because
we'll
of
be
the
able to
time.
provide some additional analysis, but again, just for clarification, the distinction, as you all know, between SUP conditions and proffers.
Right, I got it.
You know, we can't recommend or be conditioned upon, but yes, point well taken, and we will make sure to have that additional staff level analysis and recommendation ready for the board meeting.
Right.
Okay.
No, thanks. So I would vote aye, yes.
And Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Third public hearing for this evening, SUP-21-0018, 1403 Jamestown Road, rental of rooms. Ms. Costello, good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the commission. Mr. Franklin Bergeron has applied for a special use permit to allow the short-term rental of 2 bedrooms in a caretaker-occupied single-family home at 1403 Jamestown Road. The property is zoned R1 Limited Residential and is designated low-density residential on the comprehensive plan land use map and is located inside the primary service area. This SUP, if granted, would allow for short-term rentals throughout the year. No changes to the footprint of the home are proposed. Staff finds some favorable factors for this application, such as a caretaker being located on-site in the presence of adequate off-street parking. However, the proposal does not meet the recommendations regarding locations for short-term rentals in the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Staff finds the proposal incompatible with surrounding zoning and development and not consistent with the recommendations of the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Therefore, staff is unable to recommend approval of this application. Should the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application, staff has included proposed conditions for consideration. I am happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is also available. Thank you.
Questions? I have one. Your report comments that it needs to be on an edge or on a corner of a major road. This strikes me as being on an edge. The front of the property faces Jamestown Road. Doesn't that qualify as being an edge?
Yes, be considered on a major road. It's not internal to the subdivision.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Any disclosures from commissioners? Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to speak or make a presentation? Yes, sir.
Morning or good evening, sorry. My name is Franklin Bergren. I purchased the home on Jamestown Road in September. I work as a full-time first responder in Florida. Some of the concerns that I guess have been addressed to the staff members via email or phone calls were that I'm not going to occupy the home. This is my second home. I choose to reside here once I retire in approximately 5 to 7 years. This is our dream home. When I look at the comprehensive plan, unfortunately, I see, I don't know how to put this in a respectful way, some major flaws. All the special use permits and as far as tourist homes and rooms for rent, they've designated in agricultural areas, which yes, it is 52% of your area, James City County. But those 52% reside around no tourist destinations for the most part, where people come to James City County to visit tourist destinations. I believe this provides an economic impact that will assist the community. It brings tourism to the industry, or to the area that at this time with the pandemic normally isn't being found. People don't want to go to a hotel where they're in a common area with lobbies. They don't necessarily want to go to a timeshare where they're required to check in at the office, sit in a room full of, a lobby full of people, and possibly be exposed to a pandemic, or I'm sorry, a virus. Some of the other concerns that were addressed, or I'd like to address, is I've been at the house approximately 20 days since I've owned the house, in and out. Yes, it is a residential neighborhood. Not once in those 20 days, because I reside on 0.96 acres of land, have any of my neighbors came to visit me, with the exception of one person that did knock on the door that I saw via my Arlo camera, and I'm unaware who that person was. So as such, in the concerns of people, of transient people there, they don't know that I'm the owner. I've been in and out of the property. I've resided there 20 days during this time frame since September, and not once has one person came to me. I don't understand how that would be any different than a person that comes for the evening with a caretaker on site, which is going to help meet the master plan of affordable housing. That caretaker is going to be able to have a reduced rent cost. They're going to be living there as part of their rent of taking care of the home and maintaining it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have an opportunity now to speak to this subject. I have several speaker cards. Mr. John or Veronica Gomez.
Hello, good evening. My name's John Gomez. I live at 1404 Jamestown Road, and I've never seen him at that property. We go in and out of that property multiple times. Only thing I see is people cutting trees and a lot of noise going on over there, but we are totally against any room rentals because we moved in to a quiet neighborhood, which I believe is in jeopardy if this thing goes forward. We will have detrimental impact on our property and our neighborhood. The guests will disrupt the neighborhoods. They can be loud and unruly, especially on holidays. Transients coming and going, loud parties, and who knows what else. So we are totally against it. There's no reason that you should allow them to rent rooms. We don't want to live by a hotel. We moved into a very quiet neighborhood 15 years ago. Cities like San Francisco, New York, Honolulu, New Orleans, and Las Vegas have banned this type of Airbnb rooms. And Los Angeles even passed a law where the host has to live in the primary residence in order to rent his resident. Our community is zoned for R1 residential, and we would like it to see it that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Martha Caruso?
My name's Martha Caruso. I live at 110 Dover Road, which is the property directly, well, almost directly behind 1403 Jamestown Road. Thank you very much. I mean, after this long evening of that giant project that you're deciding on, I feel like a very small voice talking about one house and a few adjacent properties. Kingswood, which is the neighborhood I am in, and the neighborhood that this house is Hollybrook, is a very old, established neighborhood. I've lived there 22 years. We have children, we have seniors, we have everybody in between. We have walkers that come from across Jamestown. We've had a few break-ins. We look out for each other, and we know who's there. I'm sorry, I don't mean to not welcome you as a neighbor, because we are a very welcoming neighborhood.
Yeah.
And yet I'm concerned with that same issue of transients. And a caretaker, which is basically a property manager, does not necessarily have a vested interest in maintaining our neighborhood, our community, our residential setting that the previous gentleman just spoke with. I am not averse to long-term rental. It'd just be other kinds of neighbors. It's the transient nature. It is, if I have a problem with who stayed there, they're gone. And I wait for the next time a noisy party, or I also have an easement that is county property that goes directly from that home, basically cutting through mine and my neighbor's backyard. The previous owner walked her dog on that path. Sometimes the dog would leave its litter. We're a walking neighborhood. The people who would come as Airbnb residents would be walking through the neighborhood, maybe. I don't know. There's nowhere to walk in Jamestown Road if you're going to walk in the evening, except in our neighborhood. So I've got litter. I've got people, who knows, walking in my neighborhood. I feel like I'm an old lady who's afraid in my neighborhood. We have a very safe neighborhood. I want to keep it that way. I want it to be a welcoming neighborhood, but I am against an Airbnb type of neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vrooman?
Good
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking our small little community seriously. I have lived at 1405 along with my elderly mother for years and years. I'm a proud alumni of Matthew Whaley. I'm an actual real townie, like Mr. Vernon Getty over there. I and my mother, she's 87, she's sitting at home terrified tonight about the very thing we're talking about, transients next door. We built the house in 1973. We've been there ever since. Historical reference. Hollybrook is a neighborhood that was founded or platted prior to 1940, okay? It's a historic neighborhood. First home was built in 1940, second house 1945. It has always been, traditionally, single-family homes, okay? It is a safe environment, a nice environment. And we do not want to see it overrun by someone, not being polite, from out of state, okay, who is just sitting there down in Florida and is not there answerable day to day to what's going on that property. And as far as no one welcoming him to the neighborhood, I was the individual that came and banged on your door to welcome you to the neighborhood. So that's a farce, okay? We are not mean-hated people next door. Okay, that was the first thing I did, is I banged on his door and said, he did not answer. And like he said, all I have seen is landscape people, trucks, everything going in and out, and that type of thing. So and I'm not opposed to somebody having a bed and breakfast where they live on site, okay? Not against that. Everybody needs to make a buck, and they can do what they want with their property. But having this type of development, an Airbnb, where you have someone out of state that's the landlord, okay, who's not there, who's answerable if something goes wrong, is just not what we want to see in our small community, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Ann Baran?
I live at 108 Dover Road. My entire back property line is your entire back property line. I don't know if you've seen me out and about.
I believe your children out back playing that.
Well, my children are all
Miss,
adults. So
let's
address you.
direct it toward the planning commission,
Okay,
please. Thank
so,
you.
but I have seen people over there, and my husband would be here too. He's really the public speaker in the household. But we were never told of this meeting. We never received anything in writing, and we've been traveling a great deal. We're retired military. We bought our home in '98. We bought our home because it's a lovely neighborhood. And we never intended or expected to live behind a business, and certainly not a business with an absentee landlord. We have been landlords ourselves over time when we've had to do permanent change of station and that sort of thing. We worked hard to make certain that the people we chose to live in our house for the 2 or 3 year periods of time were people who our neighbors would enjoy having as their neighbors. And most of the time, we've been pretty successful. The idea of an Airbnb is something my older children love, and I've also enjoyed in other places. But to have it directly behind my house with strangers coming and going, with an absentee landlord, is not something that I think is the best use of that property in this particular neighborhood. I think a long-term rental is really the best idea, and also a money-making proposition. I do know my neighbors. We are friendly. We're not on top of one another. That's not the nature of this community. But most of us have been there for a very long time. And have people coming and going is an unsettling thought. And that's really all.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ms. Sharon Dennis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Dennis. I'm next, by the way. But I listened to everyone tonight and their concerns. I think what we're seeing is the fear of the unknown. I actually know some things. So I already have a tourist home on Iron Mountain Road. I'm very familiar with this area. I'm familiar with this particular, as you say, business. So let me just put everyone's fears at rest. First of all, long-term renters do not provide security that you might think, because you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I've had properties, I've long-term rented them, and dear God, they were people that I would never have believed were doing drugs, police, drinking, and I was glad that they were gone. I was glad to finally be able to do the kind of rental that allowed me access to my property, that allowed me to maintain my property. And the type of people, I think, I listened to the gentleman talk about what goes on in places. I'm originally from Brooklyn. Trust me, Williamsburg is not Brooklyn. It is not Miami. It is not San Diego. It is Williamsburg. One of my first guests were bachelors, a bachelor party they were having. 4 guys. You would think they'd have a party. They cleaned up, they took the garbage out, they made the beds. I mean, to be honest with you, you're not getting what you're thinking. People that come here to Williamsburg, and I've been doing this now for a couple of years, the loveliest people that are visiting here come from all over because they want to enjoy the very places that you get to enjoy. I'm sorry. I'm good. I'm just turning around. So seems a lot of hostility going on. I feel bad because I think people are afraid. I think they're afraid of the unknown. What they don't know is all the benefits to this. So let me tell you some of the benefits that I have seen. I was able to, first of all, I had a daycare center many years ago. And this was what I was able to transition into to save my property. I was a single parent. I started off homeless. I took care of families and children, and I love this community. So I know I don't have too much time, but I wanted to mention, I saw in your voice how you lived here and how much you love this community. I grew up in Brooklyn. I was one of 7 kids in 1 bedroom. I had to go to the cemetery to see trees. I so love Williamsburg that I want to take every property I can and keep it looking like it used to and save every tree. I'm kind of doing that. That's what I plan on doing. The only way to do that with these smaller buildings is to, if you rent them long-term, many times you do not get the support and the payment. I'm sorry, I'm jumping out here. I'll get to mine. I've actually written some things down. What I see is that it is not the scare that all of these persons are worried about. I see it as something that can enhance a community, that can give respite to people. I've had my place used for people who were displaced because of natural disasters, or maybe one person in the household couldn't, had some kind of condition, medical conditions, and when COVID happened, the other family members had to have some place to stay. I've been able to offer my place to people who needed respite for many reasons. And mostly, I'm so thrilled to be able to be an ambassador to Williamsburg that I can share this community with them because they can't live here, because they're not as lucky as us, because they're stuck with their jobs having to be in a city. But we have a beautiful place. And they don't want to come here and they don't want to go into hotels anymore. They don't want to go to timeshare. But I can tell you this, the people that have come to my place, they're kind, they're courteous. They're not just transients. I mean, these are grandparents. These are family members. And through, as we say, Airbnb or any other source, they have to pay deposits. They have to have credit. We have more security with the short-term renter than you do with a long-term renter. I can go on. I could use a drink of water, and maybe something else. It's hard for me to talk publicly. Privately, I talk a lot. But I think if we really did explore this, that we would find it's not the boogeyman, but that it's really something very unique in Williamsburg and James City County. We're not the other places. The type of people that come here, they so appreciate this kind of Well, that's it.
Thank you. Next speaker, Wilson Huffman.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Wilson Huffman. I currently live at 2032 Back River Lane. So I don't live in the neighborhood that's being talked about right now. I'm actually the third applicant tonight. So like Sharon, I'm kind of in a unique position because I own long-term rental residences in the community. I also own short-term residences. So I am very familiar with the benefits and the cons of both. And if anybody wants to stay for my presentation, it's going to be longer. I'm going to address some of those concerns that were brought up tonight. I think it will be beneficial for those people that have those concerns, whether at the end of the day they think it's a good idea or not. It does illuminate some things. So, but with that being said, I'm supportive of the folks tonight applying for these applications for multiple reasons. But one big reason that I want to talk about with the 4 minutes I have is with James City County, you know, it's a national treasure, right? So people from all over are traveling here. There's a big demand for what we offer. However, my background is I worked with Wyndham Vacation Ownership for about 4 years. And about 1.5 of those years, guess where I was at? I was at Governor's Green. So in my job, I talk to vacationers every single day. So literally, I've talked to over 1,000 vacationers about their vacation habits, about what they want to do, their dream vacations. I know it. I really do. And what I can tell you is people are they're getting away from timeshares. They're getting away from hotels. What they want is home away from homes. They want places where they can go. They have privacy. They want the yards where they can let their kids play. They want to get away from COVID-packed buildings like the timeshare companies. And, don't take my word for it. If you look at the data, in 2012, Airbnb had 6 million users. So, and by the way, there's more platforms than Airbnb. There's, VRBO, and there's a few others. But today, they have over 150 million users. So whether we want to admit it or not, this is here. This is growing. And to give you an idea, 150 million, that's about half of the population of the United States are now users on Airbnb. And we're a vacation county. So are we not going to have options for these people that want to travel that way? I don't know. I know me personally, that's almost the sole way I want to travel. We were going to go to Charlottesville one year. I was going to get my brothers and sisters to go and extended family, but we couldn't find a spot that was going to fit us all. So we ended up in the mountains of Georgia, which was actually a really lovely vacation. But we rented out this big cabin, and it's nice because we each all had our own rooms. We made dinner together. We could have our own space. We had a yard. We had porches, and that's the way we like to travel. And guess what? That community got our income that week because Charlottesville didn't have accommodations for us. Now, there's people that are going to come here no matter what. There's people that are going to stay in hotels. There's people that are going to stay in timeshares. But let's look at the bigger picture. Let's look forward. Let's make sure that we have accommodations for these people that want to stay. And once again, there is a large economic benefit to this. If you look online, you can find a study that was done in 2018. About $33.8 billion was generated to local economies through Airbnbs, not just to host, but from families coming in and spending money in the economy. So, the taxes are real. I pay the taxes. I know that money is going to the county. I know it's quite a bit. And by the way, side note, I wish my wife was here. She's the one that really runs the business, but unfortunately she's sick. As more and more of these are approved, we need to make sure that the taxes are not going to the state, but to the county, because the state is not giving the tax money to the county. And that's important. We want to keep it local. But, ultimately, I feel like these applications really are supporting entrepreneurship, it's supporting sharing, it's supporting local citizens, giving them the ability to make more money. Also, I hate to say it, but in my experience, long-term residents are much more difficult, have much more issues than the short-term residents. And once again, I'll go over why that is, but basically everybody's rated on the Airbnb system. So everybody has to be on their P's and Q's. But ultimately, hey, look, I know the comp plan changed drastically recently and making it very hard for these to get approved. But I hope that you guys can take everything into account and kind of look forward with this and take it, application by application and push some of these through. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I have no other speaker cards. Would anybody else like to? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
My name is Frank Caruso. My address is 110 Dover Road. I live right behind or right adjacent to the new property here. My wife spoke earlier. My neighbor and my neighbor behind me have both spoken. And I basically want to say that I know those rental owners. When I moved into Williamsburg, I ran the food service at the College of William and Mary. And I was here from 1998 since. When I first moved into my neighborhood, we had 2 rentals. In both cases, the owners lived either in the same house or in the same adjacent house. We now have 6 renters on our neighborhood, on our street, out of 20 houses, which is, that's not the neighborhood I moved into, but I do know the renters. And the renters, they're good people. They walk down my street, I talk to them, and they're friendly people. An Airbnb, I'm sorry, I don't think we're ready for it in our neighborhood. Maybe in your neighborhood it might be good. I don't think it's the right thing to have people we don't know for like a week and a half, and maybe the Airbnb business is gonna boom. Let it boom somewhere else. I really don't want it behind my house. So I just want to put those words out. Thank you for your help and support.
Would anybody else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Shelley Hurt. I live at 1402 Jamestown Road. And I moved from a tourist town in Arizona, and right next to my house and then one house over was a VRBO, and there was parties, there was people coming in and out, it was traffic on our road. People don't have any respect when they don't own it. The benefits to the owner she was talking about, the benefits, are mostly to the owner because they're making big money per night. We've went to VRBOs in Outer Banks and different things like that. There's plenty of lodging in this town, and from living in another area that has it, I know how the transient people are. And that's all I have to say. It's upsetting to me, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else care to address the commission at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion?
I've got a question for staff and maybe the applicant, just because my mind's a little fuzzy here. It seems to me that almost a year and a half or so, Mr. Bergeron had a submission here for the same sort of a different property. So do you own 2 different properties?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, and so you intend to live in both of them when you retire?
No, sir, I do not intend to live in the Lake Powell Road house anymore. My family's outgrown that house. We realized that a property that small is unable.
Okay, no, I got the answer. Thank you.
Is no.
As a former investor, my business partner and I owned almost 20 different properties, and we had mostly long-term rentals. And they can be horrible. I know that. I've been in court many times. It's a pain in the rear end. However, and we also owned a building that had 10 rooms, and we rented it out, but it was a commercial building and so forth in Charlottesville. But I just don't believe that an owner-occupied house in a residential area is a good thing to have. I'm sorry, I just don't think it is. I think there's areas where it's perfectly fine. If you have a big house, you live in it, and you rent the rooms out, that's your choice. But when you are not on your property, all kinds of things can happen. So I'm not really fond of that. Charlottesville was mulling that after I left there too, and their Airbnbs or their VRBOs or whatever, they require that the owner be on the property all the time. I really don't think you can be, as an investor, former investor, you cannot manage a property if you're not there. So that's just my opinion.
Any further
Just
discussion?
for the record, you know, we gnashed our teeth for a year and a half over this very issue. And we came up with a set of requirements and the staff has applied it to this. And so from my point of view, I'm here to support the staff's position and deny.
Yeah.
Based on the standards we put together.
I agree with Mr. Polster. I mean, we have a brand-new set of comprehensive plan guidelines on transient rentals, and if we don't uphold those now, when we've just finished that process, I mean, I also would be inclined to decline, to not recommend this.
I'll just add that, you know, I'm the one on this commission that for years has been against many of these short-term rentals. You know, nobody's offering to say, oh, I'm sticking with Airbnb, so we have ratings on our guests. You know, that's not part of the proffer. So I can use any platform I want. You know, this is something that goes with the property forever. You know, we don't have a sunset clause on that. We've heard that often enough. And I think this first case is a perfect case in point. You know, my concern was that we were taking housing stock away from those folks who work in this community and can't afford to live in this community. And we're seeing that tonight, that we have a second property that this gentleman wants to own, where we have taken, you know, when I look, I see that the sale was $350,000, but, you know, we continue to take housing stock away from one of the things that we heard from our comp plan is one of the biggest issues in this community and one of the highest priorities, and that is affordable housing for those folks who work in this community and can't afford to live in this community. You know, additionally, we have so many planned unit developments that folks can't live in those that where it may be affordable because they have or they can't rent them. I'm sorry. They can't rent them out because they have rules that say no short-term rentals. So we continue to dwindle what's available for short-term rentals, and that happens to be the majority of our affordable housing stock. So, I'm actually was very pleased to see this this package because we did gnash our teeth on this for a long time and came up for what I think is a very agreeable policy, because one of the other goals was to support agritourism and other tourisms and to protect rural lands, and this was another way that we were able to do that. So, if we live up to all those things, as Julia said, that we put into place, then if we don't abide by that, then what was the purpose?
Absolutely.
So.
Further discussion or a motion?
I'll make a motion to disapprove JCC SUP-21-0018, 1403 Jamestown Road, rental of rooms.
So an aye vote would be recommending denial.
Or to not recommend approval to the board, yes. Ms. Knoll,
So when I say aye, I'm denying it.
you're not in favor of the application.
Thank you.
Yes. This is just a recommendation to
Just
the
a
board.
recommendation. Thank you. Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Mr. Krupp.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
And Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Public hearing number 4, SUP-21-0020, 528 Necoland Road, Tourist Home. Ms. Costello, welcome back.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. Ms. Sharon Dennis has applied for a special use permit to allow the short-term rental of a 2-bedroom, single-family home at 528 Necoland Road. The property is zoned R8 Rural Residential, is designated Low-Density Residential on the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map, and is located inside the primary service area. This SUP, if granted, would allow for short-term rentals throughout the year. No changes to the footprint of the home are proposed. Staff finds some favorable factors for this application, such as the presence of adequate off-street parking and that the applicant will obtain the proper licensing and inspections. However, the proposal does not meet the recommendations regarding locations for short-term rentals in the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Staff finds the proposal incompatible with surrounding zoning and development and not consistent with the recommendations of the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Plan. Therefore, staff is unable to recommend approval of this application. Should the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application, staff has included proposed conditions for consideration. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have, and the applicant is also available. Thank you.
Any questions, Ms. Costello? Any disclosures? That, I'll open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to address the commission?
So again, my name is Sharon Dennis, and I am relieved that everyone left. But anyway, so I heard about these, pardon me, I'm going to have to do this. I heard about the new board members' comprehensive plan. Now, I've been in front of this situation before years ago when the comprehensive plan impacted my daycare center, and I had to close. And as soon as I closed, they changed the comprehensive plan, and a friend of mine opened a garden center right across the road. So I lost my business I worked very hard for years, and I had to close it out. And then we changed our minds, and everyone else was able to continue to do business. So I understand the comprehensive plan. Sounds like you worked very hard on it. I was curious because I was totally oblivious to when the comprehensive plan was being developed. And I'd asked, Terry here, I'd asked her, how did that, I'm sorry, I just don't have the opportunity in my life to do what you find folks do. Like you know what's going on and you're involved in this process, and I really didn't understand it. So I know how the comprehensive plan has directly impacted my life. Again, a single parent, I worked so hard. Thank God I got all my kids through. But I lost everything. So all I had was these little old properties that everyone told me to get rid of, and I said no. I worked them with my hands. I fixed them up. They're, like I told you earlier, they're not in residential settings. They're beautiful. So it's a little bit different, and I wasn't here. I wasn't involved in the comprehensive plan. I started reading the comprehensive plan, and I thought, there's some things I wish I could have partaken in. I wish I could have given my input, because I have a lot of experience with the land. I have a lot of experience with what people desired as far as visiting, and I've already experienced what this actually does, because I have one. So I had two properties. I had Ironbound Road, which was going to be my daycare center, and I have Neckoland Road, which was my first home. It was my home. I didn't want to leave. I was going to live there forever, and it's a little tiny place. Met my husband, came back from Iraq, and we had 4 girls between us, and he insisted that I had to move. Well, I did, but I love this place. So I tried keeping it, and I did rent it out. And I tried renting it to the low income, the single mom, because, you know, I was homeless, so I tried. And every person that I had that came to that house destroyed it. They destroyed it. They burnt down the shed, and they didn't pay. And so he had to pay. I thought I was going to lose it. So thank God I was able to turn the other place on Ironbound Road into a tourist rental. Yes, I made money. I'm not making a fortune, but I'm making enough. I'm finally making some money. I took care of children. I never made money. I always took care of the kids. I always made sure if there was extra, they got it. I finally have some money to fix up the place. So I know what these people are saying. I know they're saying, oh, they're making a fortune. It's not like that. I wish I could take every old home in this place and fix it up. And eventually, people will be able to have it. They won't be torn down and made into Ryan homes. I'm going to show you some pictures here. Let's see where I can go to this. Pardon me. Pardon me. Pardon me. Okay, I think it's down here. All right, let's start from the beginning. This is Nickel Land. This is how I see Nickel Land. So I know you wanted it to be like a through road. They did cut off the road to the parkway, so it's not a through road. There is a cul-de-sac. I love that, about that. They did cut it off. But the cul-de-sac, we saw some kids that were making a mud bog out of it, and that was a little upsetting. So, but there's no residence down there. It's not very residential. This is what's next to it. It's the, well, I missed showing, these are just out of my little phone cameras. There's the, give me a second, the park ranger station is over there. Then there's a pump house, and then you have, as you can see here, the alarm for Surrey Nuclear. If you look down the road to the left, there's the horse farm. It's an active, what do we call it? Well, okay, there's a good one. And there's people that come and go, and they don't live there. They're not residents. They come and go. Even when there's residents and I don't know them, I mean, everyone's friendly. Everyone just, you know, they don't have to live there. They're just all very friendly. This is the first house on the side of the street where my place is. I have known people that have lived there, but it's so transient. I don't know who's living there now. Then you go to the next one. And this is a multi-apartment unit. You can see there's commercial trucks and it comes back and forth. The owner doesn't live here, and he's not very responsive to anyone. I am there all the time. I'm very responsive. He's not. He blocked up a culvert, and it started flooding the park ranger station. So they had some issues with that. And years ago, I'm sorry, I'm looking for this. I am looking for my little thing. Okay. And years ago, there were several gentlemen that I guess they were living in one of those apartments, and they were drunk, and they came to my house while I had my kids and I was alone. I have a different perspective. I mean, I know the people that we just heard, they probably live in a very nice community, more higher end, but this isn't like that. So you had lower end housing here, and those people were a little scary. All I can say is I'd rather the short-term rental. This is my neighbor, the Huffmans, and this, from what I understood, used to be the gift shop for the community down that road. Years ago, that was a gift shop. If I could just see. This is my house, right there, really cute. You can see to the right a little square cement base. I think that used to be the gas station. So what I'm trying to show you is it's not very residential. As I looked up the road, I'm going to show you this building here. There's several buildings up the road that are abandoned. And I know the gentleman, he just moved away. And they're just simply rotting. This is his house next door. So he owns a couple of houses. He doesn't rent them out. He doesn't live in the area. And these you can see are the commercial trucks up and down. Okay. This is a cute little cottage. I want to see more like this in Williamsburg. I don't want to see the big houses. But I can tell you, at some point, and if I can't find this thing, this is what's next to it. So what they're tending to do is they'll tear down this small little cottage, and they'll put up something big like this. You look right up the road, and here we have Pay Lakes Point. Now you have homes, 400,000 and above. So I wish I had a cup of water. Would you mind, is that water available to anyone?
I'm sorry, what?
May I use that bottle of water? It's hard for me to
Yeah,
speak.
take it.
Sorry. Yay. Okay, so I understand you made a point of, affordable housing. This has been brought up before. I suppose if someone were to buy hundreds of these in the area and turn these all over, we might be reduced for affordable housing. But these are my homes. These are my properties. I don't want to lose them. And I have tried to make them available early on to affordable housing, and I almost lost them. I don't want to lose these. In fact, I just want to make them beautiful, and I want to keep them. And I don't want that. I don't want that in my neighborhood, but there it is. So anyway, I'm going to read some of these things now. And I'm going to go up just a little more on this road so you can see what exactly this particular. So this is your affordable housing right up the road. I know the gentleman that built these. He wasn't very nice because I had a friend who rented there, and she had cancer, and she was crying, and I cleaned and I scrubbed the whole place so she could get her deposit back. And I know I was on my hands and knees, and she didn't get her deposit back. I'm not like that. But that's what that looks like from the road. These are some of the houses down this road. This is all commercial. They have trucks everywhere. And so I get you've put these rules in place, but I'm hoping that in a case-by-case basis, you can look at some of these and say, well, you know, this might be a benefit to that area. Because I know I'm fixing it up. I'm trying, and the only way I can afford to fix it up. Because if I have to keep renting to people that I have rented to, I'm going to lose it. And someone else will come in and they'll tear it down. And I love that house. They'll tear it down. They'll put a big one up. So having said that, I did write up something. And I read your your comprehensive plan. And it says, short-term rentals is an emerging alternative to hotels and timeshares. Let us be aware of anti-competitive practices, choosing to support one business model over another. R8 zoning, which I am, requires conditions intended to protect the residential nature of the surrounding area. Nickel Land Road has always been both residential and light commercial. The pictures being displayed are of various properties along this road. So I've just shown you, I've written here what I've just shown you, so I won't repeat this, but it goes on to show you that it's fairly transient to begin with. And by the way, my neighbors, I love them, they love me, and they will be coming to support this. They've come and told me they would. They're not here tonight. I didn't ask them to be. But they love it. I get compliments, you know, with how I'm fixing everything up. So I said, my experience with long-term rent is very disappointing. Destruction of property, loss of legal rights to my own property, loss of money due to legal costs and non-payment of rent, stress, deferred maintenance due to loss of income, drugs, alcohol, violence, none of which are experienced with short-term rentals. And I do have a short-term rental. It's on Ironbound Road. And it's wonderful. And it has none of these concerns that are being brought before us. I have found those who enjoy visiting Williamsburg are not party animals, but appreciate the alternative experience of the natural setting of a cottage to share with family and friends. Also, since COVID, the added comfort of autonomy and limited exposure has made this an ideal option compared to hotels and timeshares. I have been able to give respite to those looking for shelter due to natural disasters and now COVID. This especially is a time to consider the usefulness of this type of business entity, not to be relegated to the outskirts of James City County or yet again in high-density, mixed-use, commercial Newtown, but in the natural setting of Williamsburg, once known and now disappearing. I've also spoken to the director of Avalon, the Shelter of Women and Children. She's a friend of mine. These SDRs could be used in times of need without feeling displaced and gives a warm, inviting home that would not otherwise be available. I've made these available to women that are displaced. And I can't do it if I just rent it to someone. And I can't live in them. Tourist homes is listed under the zoning R8 and currently allows the proprietor to live off-site. Cameras and supportive neighbors are very effective in monitoring any concerning activity. Living at the site can cause unforeseen consequences that are not necessarily good for the guest or the host. It doesn't guarantee monitoring any more effectively than the available technology. And I think a lot of us are forgetting technology is changing. I mean, we're getting old, and I could see the young people. They got it on their phone. They can see better than if you're in your own house with your doors closed. The legislative review process for SUP considers the protection of the character of the surrounding area. This type of business activity does exactly that. It preserves the smaller cottages from being torn down for larger, more profitable homes, seen just up the road with the Ryan Homes starting prices upwards of $400,000. It allows for the restoration of these historic cottages. It provides beauty and character to otherwise what is blight, which I've shown you. It makes accessible to visitors, those fleeing natural disasters, and neighbors, my neighbors, friends, and families, to come visit, and they themselves enjoy the charm that Williamsburg has. Otherwise would be relegated to hotels, not convenient to families with children or pets. My sister came here years ago with 5 boys. She was stuck in a hotel. She was paying 40%, because she didn't realize they were taking it out as well, in tips. It provides the community with higher home values because of the improvements that can be maintained because of the income generated. It provides the county with additional tax base. Much like family child care provides for the community as an alternative to center care, this should be part of the big picture of accommodating our guests visiting Williamsburg. Choosing to support hotels and timeshares, as stated in the comprehensive plan, is an unfair practice. The thriving rural, as quoted, the thriving rural character of James City County, one that provides economic benefits to rural property owners, but does not directly compete with more conventional tourism-based opportunities inside the PSA, might be considered anti-competitive practices. Which one of you are a lawyer? Can I finish?
We'll give you another few seconds, but
Thank you. Finally, if located within residential context, short-term rentals should serve to complement the residential character of the area rather than altering its nature. Not everyone in the future will necessarily use these homes to be active as STRs. This business will preserve these homes that otherwise will disappear, like much of Williamsburg once known. Specific to Nickel Land Road, please note there are many abandoned buildings with commercial truck and equipment. They've been this way for years. The high-end homes available to no one but those who can afford it. Allowing for short-term rentals on this road will preserve the character and make it available to future generations.
thank you very much.
That was hard. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of the applicant? I have one speaker card. Mr. Wilson Huffman.
Said everything on the line.
Right, thank you.
You hear more from me.
Okay. Sure.
Difficult part about this process, just so you guys know.
Could you approach the podium?
The other difficult part about this process, as some of you may not know, your own website zoning states it's allowable as a SUP process. However, your comprehensive master plan you developed excludes short-term rentals, rooms for rent, and residential areas. However, your zoning, which I printed off the other day, states it is allowable according to section 24-232 under use list. That's located on your website. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the public hearing.
Wait.
Yep. Sorry. Oh, I beg your pardon. Thank you.
My name is Dar Barshes. I own the property at 532 Negaland Road, and I had originally come to speak about the application at 530 Negaland Road, but my comments are pertinent to this application also. My property, I'm actually in support of what these folks are trying to do. In that, I own the property at the end of the road. It is 2 duplexes on 1 lot, long-term rental. And my wife and I lived there for about 10 years, and it's all rental now. I have 2 long-term tenants there, but as Commissioner Knoll pointed out, you don't know what you're going to get oftentimes. And sometimes you get tenants that, well, you just can't tell them how to live. And they're just not as clean or kept up as you would like them to be. And you're kind of stuck with that for as long as their long-term lease lasts. My wife and I have traveled around the country quite a bit, and have stayed in a number of tourist homes, and we have found them all to be very neat and clean, and their properties well maintained. And that has certainly been the case of this property owner next door to me since they have purchased the property. And that's the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to make a comment at this time? Then I really will close the public hearing. Open it for discussion. Or a motion.
This is a tough one for me because Neckoland Road is almost rural inside the PSA. As we saw from these photographs, it's a combination of declining houses that are falling into disrepair and some regeneration of tear downs and rebuilds, and it's a tough one, but under the circumstances, and I'm looking at this from the total picture, not just because we probably should support the comprehensive plan on this one as well. I mean, why did we support it on the last one if we're not going to support it on this one? But I'm also concerned about the total number of transient rentals in this particular location, including the next one. So I'm inclined to say I don't recommend.
I agree with Ms. Leverins, and the passion of the applicant obviously came through, and her goals of preserving the existing buildings are very compatible with my philosophy of historic homes or older homes, trying to preserve them. But as was mentioned earlier, a special use permit conveys with the property forever. And so, you know, there's no guarantee that a subsequent owner would share the same passion as the applicant. And again, you know, we struggled over the last few years with a preponderance of short-term rental applications and how to deal with it and how to be consistent and so on and so forth. And it was a real struggle. And I think the process through the comprehensive plan, the 2 years that the comprehensive plan was evolving before final approval, tried the best way possible to protect residential neighborhoods by putting certain requirements in place as far as the location for a short-term rental. And I think, again, to echo Ms. Leverins, I think as much as we appreciate the efforts of the applicant, I still feel that we have got to support the guidelines that we put in place. So I would be inclined not to approve.
I was going to make a comment on the last one, but I'll make it now, is one of the issues that we've had is the continuation of the SUP in perpetual thing throughout from one owner to the other. And I was really pleased to see that part of the board's legislative agenda of that one page had an item requesting that SUP would only exist for the owner. And under those sort of conditions, you know, I would look at some of these maybe a little differently.
I agree.
Based on the location. But because it is in perpetuity, I still have that same problem we gnashed about for the last year and a half. So I want to stick with what we've put into the policy and the comp plan for it. So I will not support this.
Hear a motion?
I'll make a motion not to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval of JCC SUP -21-0020, 528 Neckoland Road, Tourist Home. Did I say it right this time?
There. Got you either way. Ms. Knoll,
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Ms. Leverins.
Aye.
Mr. Krupp.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
And Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Fifth public hearing tonight, SUP-21-0021, 530 Neckoland Road Tourist Home SUP Amendment. Mr. Reisinger, you've been very patient.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Ms. Emily Huffman and Mr. Wilson Huffman have applied for a special use permit to amend SUP-19-0019 to allow for 2 additional short-term rental units in an existing duplex at 530 Necco Land Road. The property is zoned R8 Rural Residential, is designated low-density residential on a comprehensive plan land use map, and is inside the primary service area. This SUP, if granted, would allow for a total of 4 short-term rental units on the property. No changes to the footprint of either structure are proposed. Staff finds that the presence of adequate off-street parking is a favorable factor for this application. However, the proposal does not meet the recommendations for short-term rentals in the adopted comprehensive plan. Staff finds the proposal incompatible with surrounding zoning and development and not consistent with the recommendations of the adopted 2045 comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff is unable to recommend approval of this application. Should the Planning Commission recommend approval of this application, staff has included proposed conditions for consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and Mr. Huffman is also available. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions of Mr. Reisinger? Thank you. Any disclosures on this case? Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing. Would the applicant like to make a presentation? Sure do. Thank you.
All right, I actually have a slideshow. I use this mouse, I guess. Just while she's pulling that up, on the sunset clause, I would actually be open to that, if that helped us come to a common ground moving forward. For my particular application, I don't know if that's an option or not, but just throwing that out there.
It's up on my screen. I don't.
Worked hard on it. I hope we.
There we go.
Okay, cool. All right, so once again, everyone, for the record, my name is Wilson Huffman. I really wish my wife was here. She is the one that runs this, but due to emergency, she couldn't come. I live at 2032 Back River Road with my 2 little kids and my wife, our 2 dogs, and our 2 cats. So as a bird flies, that's about half a mile from this property. We have a little trail through the woods. We get there. We're there within about 45 seconds when we hop in the car. And I'll touch base on that here in a second. But look, I understand the comp plan has just been changed. And the way I read the comp plan, in seeing those 4 bullet points, to me it shows it's very, very difficult for any of these to get approved. I mean, stars have to align, you have to be in the right place, and everything has to be perfect. And so I do feel it's very limiting, but either way, I would like to speak a little bit about the benefits of this in our community and about our property in particular. But before we begin, I kind of want to talk about, can I maximize this? Sorry, I'm burning up my time. I do want to talk about a little bit about the layout of the property because people tend to get confused when I try to explain to it. As you've seen tonight, we're 3 lots away from the cul-de-sac. The property sits on roughly 1 acre. It's pretty insulated into the area between privacy fencing and thick vegetation. There's 2 structures on site, as you can tell with the picture. There's the main house, which was built in 1940, I believe, which has a studio apartment on the right, And then you have the duplex in the back, which has its own private driveway, own private parking, all that good stuff. So that right wing on the main house, that's the studio apartment. And the main house, that's like a 3-bedroom. We were living there for the past 6.5 years, and we just recently moved. Those are operational Airbnbs as of now, because we got the special use permit about 2 years ago. I'll talk about that here in a sec. So how did we get here? 2 years ago in 2019, that's a picture of the backyard, we came up here and we applied for all 4 units to be special use permitted. And at that time, there's 2 major concerns that kind of held into escrow, so to speak. And one was Necco land truly an arterial road? And then the other was affordable housing. Since then, things have changed, and I believe that those 2 worries are not that big of a deal. And I'm going to touch base on that. But what happened was planning denied it, even though it was recommended by the initial planning to get approved. But we ended up talking with the Board of Supervisors, and we came to the agreement that, hey, look, Necco land, although it's not arterial, it's a pretty well-functioning road, and it's almost more of an extension of Jamestown Road than anything else. And then also, so there was some hesitation. Ultimately, what we decided to do is say, hey, look, let's just do 2 now. If everything goes well, because we were a little worried too. We didn't know what we were getting into. If everything goes well, 2 years from now, we'll come back and do the other 2, right? Well, here we are now. And how have things been going? Things have been going very well. There's been 0 neighborhood complaints. In fact, a lot of the neighbors I talk to, I'm a roofer and I do a lot of roofing in the neighborhood, and they like it. They think it's cool. They like how well the property looks, and they're actually pretty encouraging of it, believe it or not. And you just saw my other neighbor. I didn't even know he was coming out, so that's fantastic. But anyways, it's a more profitable business model for my family and I, but it's also a better business model for my family and I. We're able to keep a much closer eye on the property. The headaches are much less. We live right down the street, as I mentioned, so if something comes up, if a guest needs something, we're there within minutes. If a toilet breaks, I'm there within minutes. It makes taking care of the property very easy. So one thing back to the arterial road, one thing I found is that the traffic in this area is a lot less than it used to be, because these things are not rented out full time. And I actually still get mail over there. So I drive down there almost every day, and I look around, no one's in the driveway, like ever. And it's like, where are these people? A lot of times what they're doing is they're out at Jamestown, they're out at Busch Gardens, they're vacationing. And to piggyback on what some of the other folks said, like, in my experience, the people coming to Williamsburg, this is not Miami crowd. This is not New York City crowd. This is not Myrtle Beach crowd. These are retirees wanting to see the sights. These are honeymooners. They're people with kids. I haven't had any party issues, none at all. And, to piggyback on that, show of hands, I don't know if this is allowed, but has anyone ever actually used Airbnb before? Yeah, so at least one. Okay. So the good thing about Airbnb, as you know, is it's a dually rated system, just like eBay, just like Uber, just like Lyft. And what that means is the consumer is rated, but also the provider of the goods is rated. So I, as a host, I have to make sure that this property is clean, it's well maintained, that we are responsive, that has everything that a vacationer will want while they're there. And on the other hand, the renters, they're on the line too. They gotta apply by our rules. They can't smoke, they can't party on the property, they can't have loud noises. There's only so much parking on the property. I mean, Emily has like a list like 5 pages long. And at the end of the day, we get rated on ours and they get rated. So, that dually rated system is very important, because I believe there's a huge stigma around what short-term rentals is and what the reality is. And I firmly believe that. I just wish people could see what I see when we're talking about this, but it's pretty difficult. But with the increased profits, we put that right back into the property. We've painted the exterior, painted the interior, new shutters, new gutters. We put a flat roof on, updated kitchens, updated bathrooms. What else did we do? New carpeting, new flooring. So, the property looks better than ever has. And we're getting great reviews. We're proud of our great reviews, because my wife, Emily, takes a lot of time and effort into making this a great experience. She'll go to the local winery, pick up wine, leave it out for the folks, have local chocolates. We keep high-speed internet there. We have, I'm really proud of my TVs. We have all these big flat screen TVs with all the new apps so people can watch Disney and Netflix and stuff while they're there. We try to furnish it as high-end as we can afford. And then, so we have pamphlets and recommendations for local attractions, and we keep the yard as well-maintained as possible and by using a local company. Well, it's actually like a one-man company, one-man show to come do our yards. And so with that, we're one of his biggest clients now. So we're supporting him. And then also, his sister has a cleaning business, and she's our main professional cleaner. So you can start seeing the echoes of what this does have on the community. This is real palpable, benefits to the community. So in addition, we offer private laundry to the main house. The Nook, we don't. But this is a picture of the end of the cul-de-sac, which this opens up to the parkway, and I'm sure you guys know it very well. This is my favorite part of the parkway. I think it's the most beautiful part of the parkway, other than when you get to the Yorktown beaches. And from this, you can bike over to the Jamestown Island, which you can see there in the picture, or you can bike up to Billsburg Brewery. And so we recommend people bring bikes, and they do. They come in, they bring their bikes on the back of their vans, and they're off in the neighborhood and off on the parkway biking and seeing the sights, which, I think is just kind of cool, sharing the area. So what do people actually think? What do the vacationers think? Well, we have an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 stars. So obviously we're doing our jobs, and you can kind of see the highlights of this. But this page right here is for what we call the Nook. It's the studio apartment, and this is just a handful of them. We got dozens and dozens and dozens, but main point I want to emphasize is, people feel home here. They can't wait to come back. And what else? Just kind of enjoying their stay. And then this page right here is for the main house. And once again, people are wanting to come back, wanting to stay. But to the point of living on the property, for the life of me, it's hard for me to truly understand why that's the rule. Because if you look at the testimonials, it'll say that Emily is always easily accessible. We're very responsive to their needs. We're there if they need. Sorry, please forgive my passion. I'm trying to keep it mellow. But the affordable housing concern. So why don't we do more of these, right? Well, I've heard the affordable housing concern for a couple years now. And, I just went around and I counted newly built units just driving around town since 2019. I counted, 731 newly built. So to think that this property in particular is going to really hurt the housing in the community, it's a stretch for me. And even if we did a handful of others, it's still a stretch for me to think that. Because I was driving up 199 today, I looked across the road, I was like, oh, there's a whole nother development going on there. And to your point, Mr. Haldeman, Jamestown is growing in the future, so I don't know. But we are not dismissing long-term renters. 2 years from now, we might say, we don't want to do short-term renters, and we might change the whole system back to long-term renters. Really, ultimately, what we're looking for today is the option to do either or. And by the way, we have no intentions of kicking anyone out or anything like that. The duplex, which we're talking about today, has one vacant unit, and the others have already said that they're moving to North Carolina next July. So we're looking at vacancy either way. And just FYI. But, as I mentioned earlier, I said a lot of this, so I'm going to kind of skip over it and just kind of highlight it. As a vacation community, I truly do believe that we need to offer these. And as a person that travels this way, and I know a lot of my peers, they travel this way, this is what they prefer, I do believe we are, I don't know if kicking ourselves is the right terminology, but I do think we are hindering vacationing here to a certain extent, and that needs to be addressed. So in closing, I've sat in several of these meetings now. I've heard y'all's concerns, I've heard the community's concerns, and ultimately, I think we're all on the same page. What we want is the same thing. We want a good community, we want a safe place to raise our kids, we want a thriving community, we want good traffic, I think all of our human desires are basically the same as in regards to that. And I truly believe that this model and encouraging this model, it does check a lot of those boxes. And maybe there is some detriments to this, but I do believe the benefits far outweigh them. And I'll say in closing that I've talked with the Board of Supervisors, or several of them, not all of them, and they're willing to take into account our application specifically and look at it individually. But it would definitely help if you guys kind of approved it here, So with that being said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. My wife was going to be the one that was going to answer the questions, but I will do my best.
Anyone have any questions of the applicant?
Just wanted to say the applicant's wife shouldn't be disappointed in your performance. You did a great job laying out your case tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So I just have one question. Mr. Huffman, just want to confirm with you that in 2019, for the special use permit, you all agreed maximum occupancy of 6 people. Unit B shall have a maximum occupancy of 2 people. No unit shall be simultaneously rented under separate contracts. Those are the existing
right, yep.
conditions. That's what you came and proposed?
Sounds right, yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
wish Emily
just
was
want to
here.
confirm that, so appreciate it.
Okay. Good question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further questions. I'll close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I forgot to ask for public comment. Would anybody, we don't have any speaker cards, right? Okay, come on ahead.
I've been through, I told you earlier, the comprehensive plan where it destroyed my business and now it'll destroy my home. We were not included in participating in this comprehensive plan. As you said, you worked really hard for 2 years, but none of us were involved in that. I don't know who you spoke to. I'm sorry, could you tell me how that's done?
It was put out on a website. It was
On the
put out to the
website?
public, no, to the
Okay.
public, ma'am, and in the paper.
Oh, because I don't get the paper.
Well, I don't
Okay.
either, but it is advertised.
I am so happy I don't have all of my obligations because I'm going to spend the rest of my time trying to do what goes on here. That's a luxury for people that work night and day. I'm going to lose my home over this, but that's okay. I think that the comprehensive plan is flawed. I know you've worked very hard on it, but I think you don't have the full scope of what this is. Also, when it comes to zoning, R8 zoning allows for it. Somehow, you have bypassed the zoning, and I don't understand how that happened. And I don't. I'm sure you do, but I don't. I don't understand how R8 zoning that has allowed for this whole list of what you can do has been overlooked and thrown out arbitrarily, because this is arbitrary. These are decisions that are made in an arbitrary way, and they change, and I've seen it. I've seen me lose a business that I worked for, night and day, starved. People made choices, and then they changed again. So that's what's going on here. It's going on here. And you stuck with it. You said, because this is what you've decided. I think it should be, at least, on a case-by-case basis. I think that zoning should be considered. And I think if it is a benefit to the community, by enhancing the properties that are obviously not enhanced, you should reconsider to not just stick with the one standard that you've come with, because I think you're missing information. Wilson has already operated next door to my property. I want him to have the 2 in the back turned into short-term rentals because the people that live there made it into trailer trash. I'm tired of living in trailer trash. I don't know where all of you live, but being that single parent, homeless, taking the crap that I got with my own hands and fixing it up. I didn't get to live in Ford's Colony. I didn't get to live in a nice place. Thank God my kids are going where they have to go. But I just think you're missing information here. And I hope that it doesn't look like you're going to change your minds. You're going to stick to the plan. And that plan, I think, had limits, just like it did with my daycare center. So I don't think anything we had to say here was going to matter, because you created something and you were going to stick to it, and it didn't matter. And I think I have more experience knowing about low-income housing. I was that person. I was the low-income housing. But I'll tell you what, John Ryan, they're doing pretty well on that road, because that's better for the community. That's better for the community. Say goodbye to Williamsburg.
Would anybody else like to make a comment on this application? Yes, sir.
One other thing, I listened to the staff's recommendations about this proposed SUP, and they state it doesn't fit with the neighborhood. Well, you have two SUPs in the front of the property. I don't understand how the one in the back can no longer fit in the neighborhood. Your closest adjoining neighbor is a property that's an Airbnb. It's your own property. There's been no complaints to my knowledge from any property owners around there. Otherwise, the board would know about it, and it brought it up, I'm assuming. So, that's all I have in conclusion.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Open it for discussion or a motion.
Let me see if I can address your concerns. I absolutely understand. I hear your frustration. The comprehensive plan is different from zoning. The difference is the comprehensive plan looks forward 20, 25 years. And as a planning commission, that's our job, is to look forward 20, 25 years. What would we like this county to look like? But I just wanted to explain to you that I understand your frustrations. And the comprehensive plan did involve an awful lot of the community. We did what many of us consider to be a Herculean job, certainly on the part of the staff, to involve many people by way of surveys, by in-person, by virtual, tried every way we could think of, notices on buses to get people involved. So certainly the next time the comprehensive plan comes up for review in 5 years, get involved. That's the time. So that said, I think the arguments probably do stand. Continuing support comprehensive plan, new language, which has in fact changed since 2019. So
I remember this in 2019, and I remember Danny Schmidt being really high on this thing because of the next to the Colonial Parkway and being able to get on a bicycle on that. But I had the same concerns then that I have today. And you know, even at that time, the property owner was going to reside in the residence. In this particular case, they're not, which is one of the tenets that I think we all beat ourselves up about, besides the location and a bunch of other things. So I'm not going to support this for those very reasons that we've put into the comp plan, and for the directive that we had from the Board of Supervisors to re-examine this issue, as well as the staff input that went into it and all the rest of it. So I think we came up with a good plan, and it's not like we haven't approved some of these, isn't it? In the right conditions. So.
I think for me, part of the issue is we hear it all the time. We actually heard it in the very first case tonight about people bringing forward a master plan and getting approvals, and then when they change it, you know, it's, you know, we always get the pushback. You know, and I kind of liken this to this. There was an application 2 years ago, you know, this, to me, this owner took it for a test run, said, wow, this is working out a lot better for me than I anticipated, so now I want to come back and redo it. But, you know, I can't speak for everybody else because I know I did not vote in favor of this, but I assume that some of my colleagues approved this based on the fact that it was limited to 2 rooms and no more than 8 people, and no contemporary or contemporaneous rentals. So, you know, that's what the applicant brought forward and agreed to. He's certainly entitled, he and his wife are certainly entitled to ask for that to be amended. But, you know, I think if they wanted that opportunity, it should have been taken advantage of in 2019. So again, as we continue to talk about, and I appreciate the offer to, you know, be agreeable to a sunset, but we just know that's not the case. So again, to me, that's just a diminishment of the property, because, you know, as much as we want to argue Airbnb is such a great opportunity, you know, there's no proffer that says that'll be the only vehicle that's used. So short-term rentals is short-term rentals. Doesn't matter what the vehicle is to make that rental. It is, I can rent that property for a short-term, whether it's somebody on the corner or somebody down the street or somebody out of town. So, you know, I'm in favor of denial, as I was 2 years ago.
Yes, you were. I made the mistake of going back and watching the 2019 proceedings and learned that I was one of two planning commissioners who voted in favor of this. It was defeated by the planning commission 4-2, but the board of supervisors approved it. I didn't give a very good explanation at the time of why I voted to approve it, but the comprehensive plan has changed since then, and it's very hard to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission not approve a recommendation to the board on JCC SUP-21-0017 530 Nickel Land Road Tourist Home SUP amend.
Thank you. Mr. Holt, please call the roll.
Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Ms. Leverance.
Aye.
Mr. Crop. Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
And Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
That does it for the public hearings. Planning Commission considerations. Adoption of a revised policy for remote participation in meetings by commission members and adoption of revised bylaws. Mr. O'Laven.
We can tag team this. I certainly think in the interest of time, we had presented this item as well as the bylaws, the remote participation policy and the bylaws to you at the meeting last month. There have not been any substantive changes. The 30 days was required. The only other addition I would recommend to staff as a change to the bylaws is, as you saw in the staff report, changing it from 30 days just to 28, because technically there's not always exactly 30 days in between month to month. But with that, we'd certainly be available for questions. And like I say, the information is the same as presented last month. It really just attempts to keep both consistent with recent updates to the state code. We recommend approval.
Questions? None. May I please have a motion to approve? Mr. Holt, please call the roll.
And to be clear on the motion, does your motion include both the remote participation policy and the bylaws?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Ms. Knoll.
Aye.
Mr. Polster.
Aye.
Ms. Leverance.
Aye.
Mr. Croft.
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
And Mr. Haldeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Planning Director's report. While you're up.
While I'm here, nothing additional to present other than what's been included in your agenda packets, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Questions of Mr. Holt?
I will bring up one interest of note, sorry, that was not included in the agenda packet because it just happened at the last board meeting. Mr. Crop was great at reminding me at the beginning of the meeting. So at the last board meeting, you all may be interested to know, at the request of a board member, staff had prepared an initiating resolution to look at potential amendments to the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance to provide additional protections to our scenic roadways, such as Forge Road. Forget the exact number in your recently adopted comprehensive plan. That was a specific GSA of the land use chapter. I want to say 6.3, but don't hold me to it. I'm testing my memory here at this late hour. So that's been going. We don't have a timeline for you yet. Certainly there are a lot of things to think about that and getting that going with the policy committee. As soon as we have some additional information on that, we'll be certain to share it with you.
Good memory, 6.3.
Aha. How about that? It's just luck. It's just luck. Don't,
Next.
don't credit me with that. It's just luck. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Planning Commission discussion and requests. Board of Supervisor coverage for December. Responsibility was mine. I appreciate Mr. Polster for standing in for me. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you.
I've got a discussion point that I didn't want to bring up in the first one because it wasn't appropriate. But we heard a lot about the cut through from Foundan Secondary, how dangerous that's become. To include in one of the letters that we had about Ford's Colony using it, Pete. Now, I don't think that's the problem of the Ford's Village, but it is a problem that probably should be addressed. And I have something that I'd like the staff to consider on that. If you're familiar with Richmond Road, where the stoplight is by the Wendy, and what used to be another restaurant to there, there's a light in the neighborhood that you go through.
Berkeley Lane.
Skip,
Governor,
Skip with
it's
Farms.
Skipwood.
but it's Governor Berkeley Lane
Yeah,
is the road.
right.
Right, okay, and there is a big, big, big sign that says no through traffic. And that's true on the other side of that, a big sign. And I used to cut through there all the time because it was more convenient to go through there. And I've stopped.
There are also speed bumps.
Exactly, speed bumps and things of that nature. Now, I know that that's private property, but if the VDOT was able to put up that no through traffic on both sides of that, and I know it's in Williamsburg, and maybe they put it up, it seems to me that that's at least a minimum that you could do. And we ought to be considering speed bumps in that place too, because it's not going to get any better. I mean, it's like the Monticello News Road piece. That's not going to get better. I mean, as Jack pointed out. And so just from a pure safety point of view, I mean, something. I also would remark that when I first came here, which is a long time ago, my next door neighbor on Long Hill Drive was a 55 mile an hour. It's now 45. And somewhere or another, just like we've seen up on the other side, we need to think about how that's going to get restricted, because it is a safety issue that's going to get nothing but better. Because as I recall, the News Road by 2040 in the historic triangle, it triples from what it is currently. And to your point, it's not going to get better. And to get the road widened, that's a pipe dream for the amount of traffic that's on there. It's not like it was Long Hill for it. So I think at least something ought to be attempted or approached, at least to try to do something for the Powhatan Secondary folks, because I think that was really their main issue, and a good one. Thank you.
Thank you much. Further discussion?
I'd just like to reiterate, our appreciation for your leadership, especially through this last half of the comp plan. So certainly know it was hard corralling at least Frank and myself and maybe some others. But, I think I speak for everybody to say thank you and extend good wishes to you and your wife. And, again, I sincerely mean that. For those of you who have not known Jack, he's been a part of J4C and Land Conservancy and a watchdog on the school system, and has been a big part of the community over the years. So I hope that continues.
Well, I'll try it. My comments are reflected back at you all. This has been a terrific planning commission. Hard work, dedication. I've learned an awful lot from each one of you. And I'll take it one step further, and that goes for the planning staff as well. Just a tremendous collection of people, professionals, hard work. We saw it in the preparation for this meeting, the background material that they provide, the questions that they're called upon to answer. Just a terrific collection of professionals, and Mr. Halavin, who's pulled my bacon out of the fire a couple of times over the last 5 years. Just, it's been a great association. I've really appreciated it, and I leave with great regrets. That I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.